Chapter 540. With a single strike from the giant silver spider, Hellion Sun Shui actually lost her memories? This was very possible. Because her divine sense suffered a shattering void tear attack, amnesia was a very normal thing. The problem was this temporary amnesia, or permanent amnesia? If it was temporary, then how long would the amnesia last? A few days, a few months, or a few years? Ling Han was astonished. He discovered that he couldn't sense any origin power fluctuations from her body. Could it be that after she lost her memories, she couldn't even circulate origin power? That was also possible. Ling Han couldn't be sure, but since this sea-race princess couldn't circulate origin power, then what threat was there? One had to know that martial artists could overturn mountains and seas because they cultivated origin power. Without origin power, martial artists' power wouldn't be much higher than normal people's, and their defense wouldn't be much higher. If you made a flower blossom tier warrior not circulate origin power to defend, and then had a normal soldier attack with 10,000 arrows, it was guaranteed that he'd be shot into a hornet's nest. However, Hellion Sun Shui still had a spirit tool that could automatically awaken, so it was practically impossible to kill her. Ling Han sighed. He actually couldn't do anything to a woman who couldn't fight back. Now, he could only hope that this sea-race princess lost her memories long enough for him to grow to a level where he wouldn't be afraid of her. Hellion Sun Shui stared blankly at Ling Han. There was hope in her eyes, as if she was hoping that Ling Han could tell her who she was. In her sea-blue eyes, there was a lovely and moving expression. Ling Han felt that this woman was a bit cute now. Previously, she was so arrogant, but now she was like a pitiful puppy. He couldn't help but laugh, and said, "I'm Ling Han, and you're Hellion Sun Shui. Do you have any impression of this name?" Hellion Sun Shui. Hellion Sun Shui. The sea-race princess kept shaking her head, almost biting a finger in her mouth. After a long while, she revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. "I'm Hellion Sun Shui." Ling Han retreated in defeat. This woman still had the attribute of being stupid and cute. Where are we? Why are we here? What is my relationship with you? Hellion Sun Shui asked in one breath, like a curious baby. Ling Han thought about it and said, "This is the Fire Nation. As for you, I picked you up. I don't know who you really are. As for this place, let's just stroll around. Once we're done, we can go our separate ways. Goodbye." He turned around and was about to leave. He really did not want to stay by the side of a high-level heaven-tier warrior. Who knew when this woman would recover her memories, and if she suddenly attacked him at that time, he would be done for. His heart could not soften but he had just taken a step when he felt his legs tighten. He had actually been hugged by Hellion Sun Shui. The woman was like a shrew, sitting on the ground without a care for her image, her hands hugging one of his legs. More importantly, this woman was terrifyingly strong. Ling Han actually couldn't break free. How is that possible? Wasn't she unable to use her elemental energy? How could she still have such powerful strength? Could it be? Ling Han immediately came to a realization. This woman was the same as him, and had also cultivated body arts. Now, she was using pure physical strength, so he reckoned that she had at least reached the spiritual infant tier, which was why Ling Han felt as if he had been locked by godly gold, unable to move at all. Let go, he said. No. Hellion Sun Shui said very resolutely. As expected, she didn't let go. On the contrary, she tightened her grip. Fuck. Ling Han's leg bones instantly made ka sounds. He formed body of iron sheet, and his physique was as tough as rare metals of the same tier, but the problem was, could 6th tier rare metals block at least 7th tier brute force? If this continued, it was extremely possible that his leg bones would be forcibly broken. Ling Han hurriedly surrendered, and said, all right, I'll let you continue to follow, okay? Hellion Sun Shui lost her memories, but her intelligence didn't seem to decrease because of this. She raised her head and looked at Ling Han with a doubtful gaze, and said, "Really, you didn't lie to me, whoever lies to you is a sea demon." Ling Han said randomly. Hellion Sun Shui was of the sea race, and didn't have any conflict with the sea demon's words. She let go of her hand, then climbed up, but immediately grabbed onto one of Ling Han's hands, as if still afraid he'd slip away. Ling Han bared his teeth. If this sea race princess recovered her memories and found out that she'd once held hands with him, who knew if she'd flown into a rage out of humiliation and cut him into hundreds or thousands of pieces. "Hai Nyo, remember, you took the initiative to hold my hand, don't act shamelessly in the future," he said seriously. Oh. Hellion Sun Shui lost her memories, so it naturally didn't matter. "No, you have to make an oath." Ling Han wanted to put a band-tightening curse on her as much as possible. This way, if she recovered her memories in the future, he could also speak nonsense to anger her, winning a chance for him to escape. "What oath?" Hellion Sun Shui asked, a bit dumbfounded. "Just say that it was you who took the initiative to hold my hand. If you make a false accusation, the Sea Emperor is a big idiot," Ling Han said. Hellion Sun Shui obviously didn't doubt him, and raised her fair and slender right hand to make an oath. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. Could he make use of the vial of curses? Although her current appearance was a bit silly and adorable, he only had to think about her previous appearance to know that this woman was definitely a decisive killer. Once she recovered her memories, she'd become a fish on Ling Han's chopping board. He wanted to pull her hair, but the pendant immediately lit up, blocking his hand. Ling Han was helpless, and said, "Pluck it out and send it to me." Hellion Sun Shui bit her teeth and fingers. After a while, she shook her head, and said, "No." "Why not?" Ling Han was surprised. Could it be that she'd started to recover her memories? "I seem to remember Mother saying that I can't just give things on a man," Hellion Sun Shui said seriously. This, Ling Han thought, and said, "Then there's no problem with the woman. He could let Hu Nyo out." "No." Hellion Sun Shui shook her head stubbornly. Ling Han was speechless. Why, he couldn't even deceive a silly and cute woman who'd lost her memories. What a failure. AI. He sighed, and walked away. Hellion Sun Shui hurriedly followed, one hand grabbing onto the corner of Ling Han's clothes, like a little wife who'd been wronged. Ling Han walked to the position of the Sea Race army, and saw that it was a bloody scene. Everyone had exploded and died, and there wasn't a complete corpse here. It was all shattered bones and flesh, and the ground was covered with blood. Ah! Hellion Sun Shui revealed a look of fear, and couldn't help but throw herself into Ling Han's arms, hugging him tightly. "Ka ka ka," Ling Han's ribs instantly cracked. "Fuck, be gentler. With you strangling me like this, I'll be the same as the people on the ground, bursting from your hug." Moreover, her small chest really didn't have any layers. He didn't feel two lumps of flesh pressing against his chest at all. "If you don't let me go, I am going to die," Ling Han said, panting. Phone reading was more refreshing. They entered the Ling family, and when the servants saw Ling Han, they all bowed respectfully, but they were not as uneasy as the servants of other families, and were instead filled with a sense of intimacy. Afterwards, Ling Dongxing and Yu Hongchang ran out as well. Their son had left for another few days, and it made them feel as if several years had passed. "This is..." Yu Hongchang was astounded. Her son was truly capable. In just a few days, he had actually lured back a beautiful wife. Wasn't that so? The big girl had a bashful and timid appearance, grabbing onto the corner of her son's clothes, and clinging to him. TSK, truly beautiful, and she also had a pair of blue eyes that were different from normal people's. Her figure was really good, especially her thighs, which were really slender, and her little butt was perked up high, showing astonishing elasticity. Only her breasts were a little small, no matter, even if they gave birth, it was not necessary for them to drink her milk. Yu Hongchang had already thought of things that would happen a long, long time later, and a smile immediately blossomed on her face. She walked over, and said, "Miss, what is your name?" She completely ignored her son. "My name is Helian Sun Shui," the Sea Race Princess said. "Miss, come." Yu Hongchang took Helian Sun Shui's hand and left. Naturally, she was going to teach her mother-in-law the mental technique, and how to control her son. Ling Dongxing patted Ling Han's shoulder sympathetically, and the father and son looked at each other, speechless. Ling Han let Hunyao out. When the little girl saw Helian Sun Shui, a fierce look instantly appeared on her face. This woman gave her a strong sense of oppression, giving her the urge to bite off the other's neck. "Come, let's eat," Ling Han said, smiling. Hunyao immediately put on a smile, and eagerly followed. The matter of the sea race obviously couldn't end just like that. After all, the death of a princess would cause a huge uproar. However, the battle of the mind could be felt even by those far away in the imperial city, and if the sea race wanted to investigate, it definitely wouldn't end well for them. With that giant silver spider keeping watch, the desolate north probably had nothing to worry about. What worried Ling Han was instead that ancient mine. What was buried underneath? Just 12 ancient corpses and a spider as big as a mountain. He didn't believe it. But with the giant silver spider, could he go deeper? If he wanted to know what was buried underneath the ancient mine, he needed to be stronger, at least recovering the cultivation of the heaven tier and relying on the Black Tower to have the power to explore. The safest way was obviously to enter the Shattering Void tier, and he could barge in from the front. He planned to stay at home for a dozen or so days, and then set out for the middle state. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both decided to stay at the Ling family and wait for Ling Han to return. Firstly, they already had sufficient cultivation resources, and secondly, to protect the Ling family, Li Xichan still had to concoct spirit pills for Ling Dongxing and his wife. Under Ling Han's guidance, Li Xichan improved very quickly in alchemy. Now, she was only limited by her tier, or else she would already be able to leap into black-grade high-level alchemist. Their strategy was to save the country in a roundabout way. As long as they served their parents-in-law well, how could they be afraid that Ling Han wouldn't acknowledge them? Guang Yuan and Zhu Wujiu were also left behind by Ling Han to protect the Ling family. Their talent in martial art was limited, and if they wanted to break through to the flower blossom tier, they would need at least a dozen or so years of accumulation. They wouldn't be of much help if they followed Ling Han, so it was better for them to stay at the Ling family and cultivate properly. Thus, a dozen or so days later, Ling Han brought along Hunyao and Helian Sun Shui and set out for the extreme Yang city. This Hunyao really couldn't be shaken off. Even though Yu Hongchang had already tricked her into calling her mother, she was like a newly born little bird. The first person she saw was Ling Han, and she was determined to follow Ling Han. Chapter 542. Bringing the two girls, one big and one small, Ling Han headed to the extreme Yang city. Hunyao and Helian Sun Shui were natural enemies. The two fought for food, and also fought to stick to Ling Han. Hunyao finally met her match, because Helian Sun Shui's appetite was no weaker than hers. Moreover, she was born with great strength, and could always occupy an advantageous position. Ling Han interrogated Na Zhiyan again, and learned that the Helian royal family had true dragon bloodline. The royal family of the Central Sea had the purest true dragon bloodline, and every generation Sea Emperor was revered by the Four Seas, fully deserving of the title of king. The royal family of the Four Seas were not simple either. They also had true dragon bloodline, but were slightly inferior in terms of purity. No wonder. Ling Han nodded. He cultivated the 9 dragons tyrant body art, and after mastery, he could possess the power of 9 true dragons. Why did he compare it with true dragons? Because true dragons were divine beasts with the strongest physical strength. Hellion Sun Shui had true dragon bloodline, and even if it wasn't pure, her physical strength was definitely terrifying. Hun Yo was a freak, but the difference in tier was too great, so it was normal that she couldn't win. After all, Ling Han cultivated the 9 Dragons tyrant body art, so there was nothing he could do. Hellion Sun Shui was like a blank piece of paper that could be written at will. Ling Han tried his best to let her accept happy things. Even if she played around with Hun Yo, it was a kind of fun, and not a fight to the death between enemies. In comparison, Hun Yo was more like an adult, never crying or making a fuss. However, Hellion Sun Shui cried and made a fuss. She obviously had terrifying brute strength, but would often widen her eyes in grievance, looking like she was about to cry. She was addicted to acting cute. They passed through the Fallen Moon Gorge and entered the North region. With their speed, they obviously didn't need a few months to reach the extreme Yang city. In only 10 days, they returned to this ancient city. Previously, they had been on their way, and although they passed through many cities, they didn't enter them. Thus, after entering the city, Hellion Sun Shui immediately became excited, walking here, stopping there. Take the cotton candy. Take the sugar man. Take the childhood sweetheart. Ling Han could only continue to pay for her from behind. This Hein Yo was a little crazy, laughing happily as she ate. Childish, Hun Yo said disdainfully, but forgot that she was also holding a candy figurine in her hand, and was currently licking it happily. Hey, where did this chick come from? She's so pretty. Hellion Sun Shui was like a fairy, beautiful and full of exotic charm. Naturally, she was especially eye-catching, and very quickly, she was targeted by others. He was a spoiled brat who was staring lecherously at Hellion Sun Shui's beautiful face, his saliva almost flowing out. However, when his gaze shifted downwards, wanting to look at Hellion Sun Shui's mound of nostalgia, he was stunned, and hurriedly shifted his gaze downwards again. Too bad, flat chest. Hellion Shui tilted her head and looked at him. She asked in confusion, "Why are you blocking my way?" The second-generation ancestor chuckled and said, "Little girl, come back with me, let's have some fun." He was obviously used to being unbridled. He waved his hand and said, "Bring her back for me." "Yes, young master." 4 strong servants immediately pounced out from behind him, all of them like wolves and tigers. Hellion Sun Shui screamed in fright and hurriedly fled back to Ling Han's side. With her speed, not many people could catch up. Moreover, so what if they caught up? If she rammed into him with brute force, Ling Han's bones would probably be broken. She obviously had terrifying strength, but purposely pretended to be weak, not afraid of being struck by lightning. Ling Han ridiculed inwardly, and said to Hellion Sun Shui, "Trash like this is called taking advantage of power to bully others. Hein Yo, don't you think this kind of person is hateful?" Hellion Sun Shui hurriedly nodded, patted her chest, and said with lingering fear, "Damn it, scared me to death." "So, we can't be this kind of person, right?" Ling Han guided patiently. "Right, we can't be this kind of person." Hellion Sun Shui nodded. "However, we can't be bullied by this kind of trash. Remember, we can't take the initiative to provoke others, that's not right. But if others provoke us, we can't be lenient. When it's time to fight back, we have to fight back. We're not punching bags, right?" Ling Han said again. This speech was too long, and Hellion Sun Shui was a little confused, but she still nodded habitually, and said, "Right. Who the fuck do you think you are, daring to meddle in this young master's business?" The second-generation ancestor was dissatisfied. Did these 2 people treat him as if he didn't exist, and actually started chatting condescendingly? He waved his hand, and said, "Cripple this man, then bring the woman back to the manor." "Yes, young master." The 4 servants pounced over again. Ling Han flicked his finger, and a stream of energy turned into 4 wisps, hitting the foreheads of the 4 servants respectively. Immediately, poof, 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 a bloody hole appeared on the foreheads of the 4 people, and they fell to the ground with a loud bang. You're so daring, even daring to touch a member of my Zhang clan. The second-generation ancestor shouted angrily, raising his eyebrows in shock and fear. Who knows you? Ling Han flicked his finger again, and this second-generation ancestor followed in the footsteps of the 4 servants. A bloody hole appeared on his forehead, and he fell to the ground. The passers-by in the surroundings all retreated. This was a serious matter. That was the young master of the Zhang clan, yet he died here. The Zhang clan would definitely be furious, and at that time, whoever was present would be unlucky. They had to run quickly. Ling Han, however, didn't take it to heart. There were pitifully few people in the north region that could make him feel apprehensive. Moreover, didn't he have the princess of the sea race with shocking brute force by his side? When necessary, he could let her train a bit. Let's go. He continued to walk towards the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, while Hellion Sun Shui and Hun Yo each held his hand on his left and right. Before entering the city, Ling Han had already changed his appearance, making himself look like a young man of about 25 or 26 years old. This made Hellion Sun Shui very surprised, but she saw through him with one look. Obviously, though she temporarily forgot how to circulate her origin power, her eyesight hadn't faded, and was still extremely shocking. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion was at the center of the extreme young city. Even though they walked and played all the way, after more than an hour, they still arrived in front of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Halt! A group of people caught up. They should be the people of the Zhang clan. Knowing that one of their clansmen was killed on the streets, they naturally immediately came to seek revenge. Ling Han obviously wouldn't pay them any attention, and directly entered the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Meanwhile, Hun Yo turned around and made a face at those people behind her. Damn it! The people of the Zhang clan all roared angrily. The 2 strongest parties in the extreme young city were the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society. Who dared to cause trouble in these 2 places? They could only wait outside. Would they be afraid that Ling Han would hide inside and not come out? Ling Han and his group entered the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Immediately, a beautiful female attendant came up to greet them, and said in a clear and melodious voice, "Guests, what would you like to buy?" Hun Yo was very displeased, and with her hands on her hips, she said, "En Yo." Ling Han laughed, and said, "Send a message to Ing Hong, and say that the person who keeps his promise has come." Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 543. In Ling Han's heart, there was a continuous stream of comprehension, causing him to be unable to contain his joy. He was definitely an extremely intelligent person. The fact that he could become the Alchemy Emperor in his last life was proof of this. Moreover, this was on the basis that he did not have the guidance of anyone else, yet he was still able to obtain such achievements in alchemy. Wasn't this shocking? Now, he applied this kind of comprehension ability to martial arts, and wholeheartedly pursued the pinnacle of martial arts. Inside his body, there was an earth-shattering change happening. It could be hard and soft at the same time, combining both hard and soft. This was something that could be said with a flip of the tongue, but it was really, really difficult to achieve. Because everyone was already used to their current state, but it was very difficult to break a habit. Moreover, to make one's body stretch like the blood-sucking origin gold and possess flexibility, this was a kind of qualitative change. Break one's ego, and reshape one's ego. In his dantian, the tiny figure of the spiritual infant sat on guard, solemn and dignified, forming one mysterious seal after another. The indestructible heaven scroll had long since been branded on the seal, and now the spiritual infant was developing the secret technique, coordinating from the inside to promote Ling Han's transformation. After an unknown amount of time, Ling Han stretched out the index finger of his right hand, grabbed it with his left hand, and gave a sudden tug. If it had been in the past, under his strong tug, his right arm would definitely have stretched out along with it. But now, a strange thing happened. His finger actually became thinner and thinner, and the tugging force was reduced by more than half. However, after the index finger was stretched to a length of 1 foot, it could not be stretched any further. This was the limit. A smile involuntarily appeared at the corners of Ling Han's lips. He had succeeded, he had finally succeeded. Although it was still far from reaching the level of the blood-sucking origin gold, it was still an improvement, a very big improvement. Again. Ling Han was no longer just sitting down. He was continuously waving his arms and kicking his legs. At first, it was very normal, but slowly, the distance between his punches and kicks was actually getting further and further. That was his body stretching. Ling Han's eyes lit up. This was not as simple as dispersing the force, but rather, it could give rise to a completely different battle style. Others would think that one punch could only travel this far before being able to spit out origin power, but in truth, one could actually punch out a distance that was several times or dozens of times that, so it was naturally impossible to defend against. Moreover, if his fists and feet could stretch out endlessly, then wouldn't any battle become a close-quarters battle? One had to know that he had cultivated body arts, so his physique was comparable to rare metal that was 1 tier higher, and his brute force was also very terrifying. With these two added together, who could fight him in close quarters? However, Ling Han immediately discovered his limitations. Without being affected by external forces, the distance he could extend his body was really limited. This was like a spring. In theory, it could be stretched very long, but it would definitely be under the influence of an external force. Moreover, when the external force disappeared, it would return to its original state, unless it was torn. Ling Han's original state was the most stable, so no matter how he changed, his body would instinctively and diligently return to this state. What a pity! Ling Han shook his head inwardly. If his body could change like the blood-sucking origin gold under his control, then he would be able to develop a completely different battle style, killing everyone until they were dumbfounded. He couldn't ask for too much. Ling Han smiled. Now, he had already achieved a small success. He went to battle that formation sword again. Ling Han exited the Black Tower. Thankfully, the formation sword did not awaken by itself and attack him on its own. Otherwise, he would be in deep trouble. Come, let's battle again. He laughed loudly, and took the initiative to charge over. Shio, 7 flashes of sword light shot out from the formation sword, slashing towards him. Ling Han snorted, and his body continued to charge forward. He did not even use the demon fairy step, allowing the 7 flashes of sword light to hit him. Now, he wanted to use this sword to hone the soft side of the indestructible heaven scroll. Pu. In this way, the 7 flashes of sword light naturally slashed him head-on. The clothes on his chest were instantly torn open, and as the sword light slashed downwards, Ling Han's chest was actually stretched backwards by 3 meters, 2 meters, 15 meters. And at this time, the power of the 7 flashes of sword light was finally exhausted. Peng, Ling Han's chest bounced back, and his face was slightly pale. It was one thing to practice by himself, but to play so hard right from the start, he was somewhat unable to bear it. 3 of my bones are still broken, and my internal organs are also slightly injured. He said inwardly. After all, this was a strike from the formation sword, which could be cut even after returning to the deity transformation tier, but he took it head-on, so how could he possibly not pay a price? But what made Ling Han happy was that this time, he didn't retreat in the slightest. He turned his body into countless particles, and the impact of the sword light was all dispersed by his upper body, so the lower half of his body naturally didn't move. It could be done. He surged with strong confidence that he could definitely subdue this treasured sword. Again. The indestructible heaven's scroll circulated within his body. The body of Diamond was known to be indestructible, and even if he was heavily injured, it could automatically heal. In merely a short while, his broken bones were already reconnected, as if he had never been injured. He continued to attack, but after all, human strength was limited. After suffering too many slashes from the sword light, he had no choice but to retreat in the end, or else he would really be cut in two. Yet the smile at the corners of Ling Han's lips grew wider and wider. His comprehension in the aspect of gentleness was becoming deeper and deeper. Every attack was an improvement, and the injuries he suffered were also becoming lighter and lighter. He learned to use more particles in his body to disperse the force he had to endure. In fact, it wasn't as simple as pulling himself up, but he could also expand to the left and right. Previously, he had only turned himself into a spring, but now he was like a ball of dough, and not only could he expand in one direction, but he could also expand in any direction. Thus, when his chest was once again struck by the sword light, his whole chest could be seen to expand like water, turning into a sheet of paper. It was incredibly thin, yet it was able to disperse at least 90% of the attack it had received in this way. At this time, the tough side of the sword also showed its power. A mere 10% of the sword's power wanted to injure his physique. His body bounced back, and returned to its original state. Ling Han's face was slightly pale. This time, he really wasn't injured, but the state he had been in previously wasn't his normal form, and would cause him a great deal of pressure. The transformed form couldn't be maintained for too long, or else it would also collapse. He thought so, and then laughed in spite of himself. If he could endlessly pull himself up, then wouldn't he be able to easily receive even the attacks of shattering void tiralites? There was a limit to one's strength, and this was in line with the Tao of Heaven. He shook his head, his gaze once again fixed on the formation sword, and said with a smile, "Within 3 moves, I'll definitely subdue you." Xiao, the thunderclap 9th heaven was unleashed, and he charged out again. Peng, 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 sword light blazed like fire, slashing madly at him. Ling Han was unafraid. Every part of his body swelled up, dispelling the attacks he received. He didn't retreat even half a step, and instead stretched out his right hand, forcibly extending a distance of 3 meters. After receiving 3 rounds of sword light attacks in a row, his hand finally grabbed onto the sword hilt. Hung, a terrifying killing intent instantly rushed into Ling Han's consciousness. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 544. What major event? Ling Han asked. A heaven-grade alchemist obtained the inheritance of the 12 palaces, and knows the whereabouts of a divine treasure trove. Is this considered a major event? Yin Hung asked in response. Ling Han laughed coldly, and said, "This joke is really not funny at all." "Then tell me about a major event that happened in the middle state," Yin Hung said seriously. "Over a month ago, a mystery realm opened in the middle state, and many people obtained benefits. There were also many newcomers that had never been heard of that suddenly appeared, and amazed the world with a single brilliant feat." "Oh, what mystery realm?" Ling Han asked casually. As for geniuses and whatnot, he didn't take them to heart. In a battle of the same cultivation level, he was confident that he wouldn't lose to anyone. "Heaven Arena," Yin Hong said. "What mystery realm is that?" Ling Han had never heard of it. "The heavens will select a large group of people to enter the mystery realm, and they'll be divided into 18 groups. They'll pass through layers upon layers of difficulties, and the teams that ultimately advance will engage in a battle to the death. The surviving side will obtain an astonishing reward, and it's even possible for your cultivation to directly increase by 2 or 3 major realms," Yin Hong said. Ling Han was astounded. That was impressive, directly increasing by 2 or 3 major realms, but he immediately shook his head. A true genius wouldn't achieve it in one go, because cultivation needed to be tempered. After all, those who achieved it too quickly wouldn't have a stable foundation. Even if it still didn't affect the advancement of cultivation, they might not be considered an expert in the same cultivation level. Some people should have taken out some good things from the mystery realm. This time, going to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's headquarters, there will definitely be people taking out treasures that they don't need to auction, Yin Hong continued. Only then did Ling Han reveal an interested expression, and nodded. Then it's indeed worth going. I heard that some newcomers have very strong momentum this time. I'm really worried that they'll be poached away by the other region's branches. At that time, in the martial art competition, we won't have the upper hand, Yin Hong said worriedly. Oh, you're even stronger than Xian Er. Ling Han was a little surprised. After Zhu Xian Er had recovered from the injury to her divine sense, her strength had advanced rapidly. Firstly, it was because of the rebound, and secondly, Ling Han had given her many alchemical pills, as well as natural treasures like great beast meat and spiritual liquid. It was impossible for her cultivation level to not advance quickly. Yin Hong nodded with a serious expression, and said, very, very strong. They're all in the flower blossom tier, and 2 of them have even advanced into the high level of the flower blossom tier, and are qualified to challenge the second sword in the world and other king tier geniuses. To be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Yao Huiyue, only then did Ling Han put on a cautious expression. In a battle of the same cultivation level, he had the confidence to win against Yao Huiyue, but if there was a difference of 4 to 5 cultivation levels between them, then it would be hard to say. After all, not only was Yao Huiyue a super genius, he was also from a great ancient sect, and had many powerful techniques. Although they had fought once before, Ling Han had first relied on the thunder battle armor, and secondly, Yao Huiyue had limited himself to 3 moves. In the end, Yao Huiyue had gone all out on the 3rd move, but it just so happened to be the mysterious 3000, which was why Ling Han had broken through. Therefore, that battle was definitely not a demonstration of Yao Huiyue's true abilities. Who are those new people? Ling Han asked. Xia Yuren, Ji Wenshan, Fei Hong, Wu Huayun, Lang Wu Xian. Yin Hong counted with her fingers, really knowing them like the back of her hand. Ling Han frowned, and said, these are all in the flower blossom tier, all, not even 30 years old, none. Ling Han was shocked. The new people of this generation were really strong. In his last life, probably only he and the Sword Emperor broke through to the flower blossom tier before the age of 30, which was pitifully few. But in this life, countless geniuses appeared as if they had been overturned. No, it wasn't that the geniuses of this generation were stronger, but rather that the environment of martial art in this life was too good. Various mystery realms opened, allowing people to rapidly increase their cultivation level, and the change in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth allowed more natural treasures to appear, causing the entire martial art to develop at an accelerated pace. On such a foundation, there were naturally more geniuses, and they were also stronger. He couldn't help but reveal a smile. Being able to exchange blows with countless geniuses was naturally extremely beneficial in sharpening his battle prowess. Moreover, there was really no meaning in always trampling on random people. I really want to battle with these people. Ling Han said unhurriedly. I'm sure that some of those people will definitely be recruited by other regions to participate in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's competition this time, so you have a chance, Yin Hong said. Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, I only agreed to participate in the alchemy competition. If you want me to participate in the martial art competition, fine, but add more money. Hey, you're the one who said you want to find them to fight, I'm just creating an opportunity for you. Yin Hong rolled her eyes. I've never seen someone like you, biting the hand that feeds you, and only thinking about money. Ling Han shook his head, and said, as expected of a businesswoman. It's obviously a matter of taking advantage, but you make it sound like it's a loss. Fine, up to you. If you want me to fight, then show me your sincerity. Yin Hong gritted her teeth, and said, 100,000 2-star origin crystals, is your sincerity enough? 2-star origin crystals. I don't accept that kind of trash, Ling Han said disdainfully. He'd already broken through to the flower blossom tier, and 2-star origin crystals were practically useless to him. 1,000 3-star origin crystals. Yin Hong slammed the table as if a piece of flesh was cut off, her face full of pain. No, do I look like a beggar to you? Ling Han turned to ask Hunyo. No. Hunyo was obviously on the same side as him. Xian what do you think? He asked Zhu Xian. Of course not, Brother Han. Zhu Xian immediately said sweetly. Ling Han turned to Helian Sun Shui, and before he could ask, this princess of the sea race said, Ling Han isn't a beggar. Fine, she knew how to answer first, her intelligence had improved considerably. Ling Han turned around, and said, everyone says I don't look like a beggar, but why do you use a beggar's method to dismiss me? Aren't you looking down on me? Yin Hong wanted to punch someone. Who used 1,000 3-star origin crystals to dismiss a beggar? She was the daughter of the pavilion branch master of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, so she was naturally born to do business. She immediately said shamelessly, just 1,000, no more, I only have one life. Why don't you sleep with me? With my status, sleeping with you once would cost at least 1,000 3-star origin crystals, and if you sleep with me a few more times, you'd have to pay me back. Ling Han instantly retreated in defeat. Encountering this kind of female pervert, he really felt helpless like he was facing a hedgehog. He sighed, and said, You're such a pervert, does your family know? I have big breasts, so what if I act like a pervert? Yin Hong said very arrogantly. If the heavens aren't satisfied, then send down a bolt of lightning to subdue me. Hong. Her words had just fallen when a loud noise was immediately heard, like the rumble of thunder. Both horses were so shocked that they raised their hooves in panic, causing the carriage to sway for a while. Yin Hong's pretty face couldn't help but turn pale. Gods were watching, she wouldn't jinx it, and the gods really heard her, right? That's not right, someone's fighting. Ling Han immediately dashed out. Chapter 545. Ling Han dashed out of the carriage and saw that in the sky not far away, there were two people fighting fiercely. Flying physically, they were at least in the flower blossom tier. Being far away, Ling Han obviously couldn't sense the two's aura and couldn't distinguish their tier, but with his eyesight, he could clearly see their appearance with a glance. They both looked to be in their 20s, extremely young. This wasn't just looking young, but really being young. Majestic blood qi soared into the sky, showing their shocking vitality. The two exchanged another blow. One used a saber, and the other used a sword. With a swing, 19 flashes of saber qi and sword qi crisscrossed as if they were going to cut open the heaven and earth, extremely terrifying. Ling Han was shocked. He only grasped 19 flashes of sword qi, and the two in the sky didn't lose to him. This was too ridiculous, encountering young elites of this level on the road. However, his blood soon boiled and his fighting spirit soared, wanting to go up and fight. Hung. In the sky, the two young elites displayed all their moves. The will of martial arts spread, easily knocking out a spiritual pedestal tier warrior. Flower blossom tier cultivators bloomed the martial art divine flower, which could draw upon the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to increase their attacks. Thus, their destructive power was extremely terrifying. Even if they fought in the sky, the shockwaves from the falling battle could easily slice off mountains, as if the end of the world had arrived. Peng, a mountain peak fell, and just so happened to be smashing towards the top of Ling Han's head. With a slash of his sword, it was split apart, and the mountain peak fell from both sides. Peng, under the terrifying impact, the ground instantly began to shake like a carpet. Ling Han instantly found a reason to fight. So, he also flew into the sky and shouted, Hey, those two brats dare to use rocks to smash me, sword. He swung his sword, attacking the two at the same time. The two were fighting fiercely, completely not thinking that there was no third party intervening, and couldn't help but be angry. However, Ling Han's sword was also ridiculously powerful, and they had no choice but to parry. They temporarily gave up attacking each other and parried towards Ling Han. Peng. With the two great geniuses joining forces, their battle prowess was simply too terrifying. Even a monster like Ling Han was forced to retreat. However, Ling Han's fighting spirit was blazing. These two people were both in the 7th layer of the flower blossom tier, which was a whole 5 tiers higher than him, who was in the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier. However, there was not much difference in their battle prowess. This kind of opponent was too rare. How could he be willing to give up? He had finally found a reason to intervene, so there was no way he would leave just like that. He let out a long roar and activated the demon fairy step. The desolate hell sword was unsheathed, and this was the last move. It was as if he had transformed into an Asura who had fallen into hell, and his killing intent was burning the sky. The two of them were both angry and shocked. They were fighting to their heart's content, but they were unexpectedly interrupted. "I'll kill this brat first, then we'll settle the score." "All right." The two of them reached an agreement and joined forces to attack Ling Han. One wielded a sword, drawing forth endless flames, while the other wielded a saber, scattering tens of thousands of rays of golden light, incomparably swift and fierce. Either one of these two great geniuses could practically sweep through the flower blossom tier, and now that the two of them joined forces, it was truly too terrifying. Even someone as strong as Ling Han was suppressed, but this made Ling Han even more excited. Using the demon fairy step, the desolate hell sword didn't change into a defensive stance at all, only a swift and fierce attack after attack. The two of them originally had the intention to kill Ling Han quickly and then fight to their heart's content, but as they fought, their fighting spirit was also aroused. Not only did they go all out, their alliance also collapsed, turning into a 3-way battle royale. They were all geniuses and were confident that they were invincible among their peers, so they disdained to join forces with others to defeat another worthy opponent. In the sky, the fierce battle raged. Rain of fire and golden light fell one after another, as if the world was going to be destroyed. Zhu Xian'er opened a defensive shield. Although she was only in the 7th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, it was more than enough to block the aftermath of the battle between flower blossom tier warriors. Hunyo became excited and continuously bared her teeth, seeming to want to join the battle. Meanwhile, Hellion Sun Shue's face was full of panic as she said, "Could Ling Han have been wounded?" "Ha, he deserves to be wounded. Who told him to charge up himself?" Yin Hong said, taking pleasure in his misfortune. "You're a bad person." Hellion Sun Shue pouted. "I have big breasts, so I can be a bad person." Yin Hong stood in front of Hellion Sun Shue with her hands on her hips, and even deliberately stuck out her chest, making Hellion Sun Shue feel embarrassed. How could this woman be so perverted? Ha ha ha. In the sky, the three of them laughed loudly and stopped fighting at the same time. "Delightful. Delightful," the sword wielder said. "I'm Fei Hong, dare I ask how I should address brother?" So he was Fei Hong, a super genius that had recently risen up. He'd heard Yin Hong mention him just now. No wonder, how could there be so many geniuses in the world, encountering them as they walked. "I'm Han Lin," Ling Han said with a smile, and said to the saber wielder, "And this is Lang Wu Xian," this person said somewhat coolly, appearing very cold. But just by looking at his appearance in battle, one would know that when this person was hot-blooded, he was quite scary. Brother Han's name, I've actually never heard of it." Fei Hong revealed a surprised expression. A genius like Brother Han should be famous throughout the world. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "That's why I'm going to the middle state, to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat." Fei Hong laughed as well, while Lang Wu Xian was expressionless, like a wooden man. "He shouldn't be called Wu Xian, but Wu Xiao. You two should be from the middle state, right? Why have you come here?" Ling Han asked. "I arranged to fight with this guy, and fought for half a month. Unknowingly, we fought here," Fei Hong said with a smile. Fighting from the middle state to the north region, these two really knew how to toss things around. "Come, drink." Ling Han was in high spirits, and called the two onto the carriage. He took out the ingredients from the Black Tower, as well as the medicinal wine refined from the various spirit herbs that grew in the Black Tower. This was not only strong, but also very nutritious. Ordinary wine was practically unnoticeable to cultivators, but this medicinal wine was completely different. It was definitely strong enough. After a single cup, Fei Hong's spirits immediately soared, and Lang Wu Xian couldn't help but stretch his wooden face, as if it had gained life. They drank, and counted the heroes of the world. "Brother Han, so you're participating in the tournament of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion on behalf of us. Then you have to be careful. I heard that Xianyuan Ziguang will also represent the South region in the tournament." After a few cups of wine, Fei Hong and Ling Han already had their arms around each other's shoulders, calling each other brother. "Is he very strong?" Ling Han asked. He didn't say that he was actually participating in the competition of alchemy. Of course, if he felt like it, he would also consider the competition of martial art. "Very strong," Lang Wu Xian suddenly opened his mouth, and evaluated solemnly. "I am no match for him." Ling Han was surprised. Although Lang Wu Xian basically didn't say much, this kind of person would either not say anything, or whatever he said would definitely hit the nail on the head. Even he admitted that he was no match for Xianyuan Ziguang, which showed that this person was indeed very strong. Chapter 546. Previously, in the chaotic battle between the three of them, there was practically no difference in their battle prowess. Of course, Ling Han did not use ultimate moves like the mysterious 3000, but he believed that the two of them must have held back. There were some secret techniques that would only be used in a life-and-death situation. However, Lang Wu Xian admitted that he was no match for Xianyuan Ziguang, which meant that the latter was not only stronger, but also stronger by a large margin, which was why even a proud person like Lang Wu Xian admitted that he was no match for him. "That guy is indeed very powerful," Fei Hong said with a nod. "However, he has the advantage in cultivation level, and is already in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier. If we battle at the same cultivation level, I'm confident that I won't lose to him." "No, even if we battle at the same cultivation level, we're no match for him." Lang Wu Xian shook his head. "You've never fought him before," Fei Hong said, unconvinced. Lang Wu Xian said with absolute certainty, "Unless we can break through our limits again, a mere increase of a few minor tiers would not be able to make up for the gap in battle prowess between us. On the other hand, Han Lin has a chance to battle Xianyuan Ziguang, when your cultivation levels are the same. Otherwise, he will still lose." This time, Fei Hong was convinced, and said, "Brother Han is only in the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier, yet is able to fight us to a draw. Indeed, his battle prowess is superior. This also makes me realize that I cannot be complacent. I thought that I had already polished my battle prowess sufficiently, but I never thought that there would always be someone better than me. Brother Han is even more freakish. Could Xianyuan Ziguang be from some ancient great sect? How could he be so powerful?" Ling Han was slightly incredulous. His background is mysterious, and no one knows his true origins. However, I've fought with him before, and his bloodline is very powerful, enough to increase his battle prowess by 3 stars, Lang Wu Xian said with absolute certainty. 3 stars don't say 3 stars, but for prodigies like them, they had almost increased their battle prowess to the limit. Being able to increase battle prowess by 3 stars on top of their limit was naturally enough to turn the tables. Lang Wu Xian paused, then said, "If he does not use the power of his bloodline, his battle prowess should be similar to mine at the same cultivation level, but with the addition of the power of his bloodline, his battle prowess would be even stronger." Ling Han nodded. There were truly too many capable people in this world. He absolutely could not be complacent. If he remained stagnant, it would be equivalent to constantly regressing. "Brother Han, we'll meet again in the Central State." After Fei Hong and Lang Wu Xian drank to their heart's content, they bid farewell to Ling Han one after another. "The battle with you today has put a lot of pressure on us. We need to find a dangerous place and have a good bloody battle. If we don't die, our battle prowess will increase by a lot. Then, we'll find Brother Han to spar with. Alright, Ling Han readily agreed. Geniuses were not as glorious as they seemed. Which one of them did not exchange their life for it? The two of them flew off, but each took a different direction. Presumably, only spiritual infant-tier beings would be able to make them fight a bloody battle. If they didn't provoke demonic beasts of this level, then they would encounter human experts, squeezing out their own potential as they fled to increase their cultivation and battle prowess. Sigh. Yin Heng immediately sighed. At first, I thought we had a great chance in the martial arts competition, but I never thought that so many freaks would suddenly appear. I'm so angry, can't you guys appear a year later? Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, I'll recommend you an expert. I guarantee that whatever Xianyuan Ziguang will be swept away. Oh, you can't be saying it's you, right? Yin Heng looked at him with a face full of suspicion. I've already said it, it's only 1,000 3-star origin crystals as an appearance fee. If you want more, I can only pay with my body, get lost. Ling Han rolled his eyes. The expert I'm talking about is her. He pointed at Hellion Sun Shui. Pooh! Yin Heng instantly spat out a mouthful of water. What kind of joke was this? Hellion Sun Shui was also timid, and hid her body behind Ling Han's back. Her two slender hands grabbed onto the corners of Ling Han's clothes, looking like she was really afraid that she would be sold off by Ling Han. Ling Han sighed. This was the expert that was the best at posturing in the world. After another few days, they arrived at the famous region wall. This was a transparent wall that towered into the clouds. Everyone guessed that it was formed by a formation, but no one could find the location of the formation's eye, so it was only a guess. The region wall separated the middle state and the 4 great regions, as if dividing a continent into 5 grids, and also made the martial art level of each region completely different. The region wall had no effect on normal people, but the higher one's strength, the greater the effect. If a spiritual infant-tier warrior passed through, not only would his tier temporarily drop, even his life force would be considerably shaved off. So, if one wanted to roam the world, it had to be done as soon as possible. Flower Blossom tier warriors were the best, they didn't have to fear being injured when passing through the region wall, and their strength was enough to protect themselves. This region wall towered into the clouds, as if it had no end. What's at the end of the sky? Ling Han asked. At the end of the sky, the legendary divine realm, Yin Heng answered. Ling Han shook his head. In his last life, he flew endlessly towards the sky, but soon encountered terrifying astral winds that even heaven-tier warriors couldn't withstand, so he could only helplessly give up the idea of what was at the end of the sky. One day, I'll definitely cut open this piece of sky and pierce through. He said heroically. Shattering void-tier warriors shattered the void to become gods, and they broke through this kind of end of the sky. Wang! Suddenly, the color of the sky changed, becoming extremely dark all of a sudden. Then, it condensed into a black cloud with terrifying lightning flickering within. Thunder tribulation. Impossible, how could Flower Blossom tier warriors attract thunder tribulation? Apart from alchemy tribulation, it was said that only breaking through to the shattering void tier would attract thunder tribulation. In the black cloud, a single eye strangely appeared. It was as huge as a mountain, staring at where Ling Han and the others were. Ling Han was certain that he could. This eye was staring at him, and even if he had a sliver of the divine sense of the heaven tier, at this moment, he still had the urge to escape into the black tower. That pressure was too terrifying, making his soul feel as if it was about to explode. However, he didn't want to escape. This eye didn't have any killing intent, only extreme disdain, as if it was mocking him. Eye of Heavenly Tao. Ling Han was overwhelmed with shock. He had read from ancient records that if a mortal said anything disgraceful or did anything that could affect the balance of heaven and earth, the eye of heavenly Tao would appear and give a warning, or even kill. Of course, it wasn't that just anyone cursing would cause the eye of heavenly Tao to appear, but that person could indeed affect the balance of heaven and earth in the future, which would cause the eye of heavenly Tao to appear. Perhaps it would even make a move and directly erase the unfavorable factor that would affect its existence. Could it be that he said he would cut open this piece of sky, and that scared the heaven and earth? Moreover, he could possibly do it in the future. It really was worthy of him. Ugly freak, get lost, Nyo doesn't like you. Hunyo jumped onto the roof of the carriage and put her hands on her hips, looking fierce. The eye of heavenly Tao looked at Hunyo, and it obviously revealed a hint of fear. Suddenly, black clouds rolled and enveloped the eyeball, then quickly disappeared. When the black clouds dispersed, the eye of heavenly Tao actually disappeared as well. Fuck, it was really scolded away by Hunyo. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 547. Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, "Come, this time, you can only die with a grievance." His eyes also revealed killing intent. Having been repeatedly provoked by Jia Ming, his killing intent was also stirred. As long as he could kill, he would definitely not be lenient. Jia Ming snorted. He knew that merely relying on the suppression of a major tear wouldn't be enough to kill Ling Han. He roared in a low voice, and a strange sound came from his throat. All the veins on his body bulged as if something terrifying was about to drill out of his body. Ling Han didn't dare to underestimate him. Jia Ming's battle prowess had obtained the approval of the Stone of Martial Arts, suppressing the prodigies of all ages and ranking 51st. Although this wasn't his current peak battle prowess, he still couldn't be careless. Underestimating any prodigy could very possibly plant the seed of the hatred of annihilation in him. For styles of demon snake. Jia Ming shouted loudly, and charged towards Ling Han. His fist shot out, aiming straight for Ling Han's lower abdomen. Ling Han raised his hand to block the attack. His palm slashed onto Jia Ming's wrist, but Jia Ming's wrist was like a ball of flour. It actually spun around and struck towards Ling Han's chest, the sharp blade in his hand emitting a cold light. Ling Han was astounded. Could it be that this guy had soft bones? How could he deform his hand like that? This wasn't just comprehending the soft side, but some kind of secret technique. It was like a snake. Yes, it was the bones of a snake. Ling Han's body abruptly bent backwards, blocking the swing of the curved blade. It was practically impossible for a normal origin power martial artist to perform such an action. Only a body cultivator could make the body react so quickly. Moreover, it was as if Ling Han had been chopped in half by a saber. The degree of bending of his upper body was even more unimaginable. Jia Ming swung his fist again. This time, his arm had transformed into a large snake. The snake's head opened and bit towards Ling Han. The black snake's head was vivid and lifelike, and its venomous fangs could be clearly seen. This punch was really too fast, so fast that Ling Han didn't even have time to dodge. Pooh! This punch instantly pierced through Ling Han. Jia Ming frowned. He did not manage to hit Ling Han with this attack. Ling Han transformed into a flash of lightning and escaped 10 meters away. He once again appeared, and said with a smile, "I almost got hit." Not bad, this move is not bad. One move after another, it does have some skill. He had already cultivated the thunderclap 9th heaven to the level of small accomplishment, so his speed was obviously fast. More than a little skill. It's more than enough to kill you. Jia Ming raised his battle prowess, and charged towards Ling Han. He was indeed tyrannical. He was a genius of the Earth Dragon sect, had left his name on the martial arts stone, and was also a major tier higher than Ling Han. Whether it was power or battle prowess, he had the upper hand. If it wasn't for Ling Han's powerful recovery ability and the thunderclap ninth heaven to avoid damage, he would definitely have been heavily injured by his opponent long ago. Even so, Ling Han was becoming more and more passive. In 10 moves, he could only return 1 or 2 moves. Today is the day you die. Jia Ming gave a long shout. He wanted to kill Ling Han in a single blow. You say it better than you sing. Ling Han said calmly. He was only testing to what extent his physique's defense could reach, and this was also not a reflection of his full battle prowess. I'll write these words on your tombstone, and let the world know that there's such an arrogant idiot who's still so stubborn even when death is at hand. Jia Ming laughed loudly, and the curved saber shone with a cold light. This was extremely terrifying, and could pose a great threat to Ling Han's defense. After all, it was a high-level spirit tool, and added with Jia Ming's even stronger power, it could even tear apart 8th-tier rare metal. Ling Han no longer passively took a beating. He drew out the Revere Life Sword, raised it in his hand, and pointed it at Jia Ming, and said, "My sword will slash you." Jia Ming looked at this sword, and could not help but reveal a moved expression. He blurted out, "Formation patterns." This was obviously a sword, but it was actually covered in formation patterns. Strange, too strange, exceeding his imagination. You can die by this sword, so you can have no regrets. Ling Han brandished his sword and charged out. Previously, without a sword in hand, he was unable to maximize the power of Sword Ray, but it was different now. The Revere Life Sword was made from some godly metal, and added with the murderous aura formed from the formation patterns, the Sword Ray that was unleashed naturally had stronger destructive power. Shua, Sword Ray swept out, as if it could destroy the heavens and the earth, extremely terrifying. "Hang, I'm in the deity transformation tier, do you think I'd be afraid of you?" Jia Ming snorted coldly, and brandished his fist, turning Ray into chi, which condensed into multiple large black snakes that pounced towards Ling Han to bite. Pu, the formation patterns on the Revere Life Sword shone. There were only 7 of them, but even so, it was still extremely terrifying, twisting those large snakes into pieces. Jia Ming's expression was livid. He knew that this sword was very powerful, but he had never thought that it would reach such a level. The destructive power could only be described as terrifying. How could there be such a treasured tool? What Ling Han brandished was not as simple as an exceptional weapon, but also a formation. An exceptional killing formation. How could anyone break through this? Jia Ming howled, and finally unleashed his ultimate move. The large snake's shadow behind him disappeared, and turned into a real earth dragon. This kind of action caused him incomparable pain. His face was covered with blue veins, as if they were about to burst. After he gave a loud roar, the earth dragon's shadow behind him finally stabilized, emitting an ancient and desolate air. At the beginning of the world, an earth dragon emerged from the crack between heaven and earth, ancient and mysterious. The earth dragon raised its head. It did not have any facial features, and only had a mouthpiece. Its whole body was dark red in color, and one could clearly see its limbs. It was as if it could even ooze greasy bodily fluids, giving off an extremely disgusting feeling. Die! Jia Ming pointed at Ling Han, and that earth dragon immediately pounced towards Ling Han. So fast. This was not a physical body, and could not be measured with common sense. In an instant, it had arrived in front of Ling Han, and ruthlessly bit down. However, because it was not a physical body, it was naturally impossible for it to cause any substantial damage. Its whole body surged past, as if a shadow had streaked past. Yet Jia Ming laughed loudly, and said, "Ling Han, you are already a dead man." His face was a bit pale, yet he wore a carefree smile. This was his true trump card, which drew upon the power of his bloodline. Moreover, because his ancestral blood was not yet dense to the extreme, using such a powerful move was very strenuous for him, and would even cause a certain degree of backlash. But it was all right. Although this earth dragon was a shadow, and could not possibly cause any damage to a physical body, it specialized in hurting one's spirit. Ling Han's spirit should have been swallowed by the earth dragon. Even if it had not completely disappeared, there would at most be a shred of it left, so how much strength would he have left to battle? He gave a long roar, and charged towards Ling Han. This time, he was going to completely kill Ling Han. With a burst of brute force, he shot out like an angry arrow, and instantly arrived in front of Ling Han. The curved saber in his hand slashed towards Ling Han's neck. The toughness of the physique was cultivated through cultivation, but the softness of the physique needed to be controlled. Was Ling Han's current state still okay? Die. A cold smile hung at the corners of his lips. He could finally kill this great thorn in his side. Chapter 548. The youngster finally revealed a look of surprise and walked towards Ling Han seriously, saying, "You can actually block one of my moves." "Not bad, not bad. Who are you to have the right to let me know your name? Are you retarded?" Ling Han said coldly. This youngster really thought he was the king of the world, and everything revolved around him. "How dare you!" The youngster was furious, and struck out with another palm. Instantly, a total of 23 fierce fire tigers appeared, pouncing towards Ling Han. Each fire tiger was extremely terrifying, capable of suppressing a normal 9th-layer flower blossom tier cultivator. These 23 appearing together was absolutely terrifying. 22 flashes of chi. Ling Han couldn't help but be surprised. He only grasped 19 flashes of sword chi, and his attainments in fist arts were obviously even more lacking. However, he only snorted coldly and still struck out with his fist, striking out 17 silver dragon elephants. Peng, 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 the dragon elephants and fire tigers collided and tore at each other. It was obvious that the fire tigers had the upper hand, and only 13 of them were able to match the 17 dragon elephants. The remaining 10 fire tigers continued to charge towards Ling Han. Ling Han used the demon fairy step and dodged this attack. His eyes flashed with a strong fighting spirit, and he shouted, "Take another punch from me." He punched out again, and this time, he incorporated an ancient bone pattern. The intent of martial art instantly became indescribably resplendent, and the power of the 17 dragon elephants skyrocketed several times, counterattacking towards the youngster. Somewhat interesting. The youngster struck out with a palm, and it was still 23 fire tigers that pounced. Peng! This time, the 17 dragon elephants were actually able to match 17 fire tigers, but there were still 6 fire tigers that continued to pounce towards Ling Han. It couldn't be helped, this youngster's comprehension of martial art was deeper than Ling Han's, at least in the field of chi. Added with the fact that the youngster's cultivation was higher, he definitely had the upper hand, which was something that couldn't be helped. Most importantly, the youngster was also a genius, and a super genius at that. Ling Han gave a long howl and used the demon fairy step to cut in front of the youngster, wanting to engage in close combat. He had formed the body of iron sheet, and added with the fact that the 9 dragons tyrant body art had also advanced into the flower blossom tier. In terms of close combat, he was definitely the strongest in the flower blossom tier. Unless the other party was also as monstrous and cultivated some kind of supreme physical skill, not only would his physical strength be terrifying, but his physique would also be incomparably strong. Relying on the wonders of the demon fairy step, he successfully cut in front of the young man and blasted a punch in front of him. "Where do you get your confidence to fight me in close combat?" sneered the youth. He sent a palm at Ling Han, his speed ridiculously fast. Generally speaking, martial artists would avoid close combat because everyone only cultivated elemental energy and did not have a strong physique. In a split second, you could spit out 10 or even 20 rays of elemental energy from your palms, but without enough energy to support it, could you wave your hands 10 or 20 times in a split second? If there was enough distance between them, then a martial artist would only need to flip his hand and wave his sword to injure someone from afar. Can you run faster with a leap, or can I come faster with a raise of my hand? But in close combat, raising one's hand and flipping one's palm became a relatively extravagant thing. There was a saying that a whip was too long to reach, but if a whip was too long, it would similarly be inflexible when used. However, this youngster was actually extremely skilled in close combat. This palm strike was very experienced, showing all his skill. This proved that the other party definitely had a strong physique. Ling Han's fighting spirit rose, and with a long howl, he began a fierce battle with the other party. Peng, 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 they both fought short and fast, without any fancy moves, only displaying the will of martial art. One after another, vein-like patterns shone brightly, continuously being shattered and reformed. In this battle, the two of them actually fought to a draw. Ling Han's physique was undoubtedly stronger, tempered by the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and after cultivating the 9 Dragons' tyrant body art, his physical strength was similarly terrifying. The other party's physique was inferior to Ling Han's, and his brute force was also inferior, but the stronger origin power made up for this shortcoming. I've really underestimated you, the youngster said coldly, killing intent circulating in his eyes. Peng, a terrifying force burst forth from his body, turning into thousands of fire blades that bombarded towards Ling Han. Even if Ling Han had cultivated the body of iron sheet, and his physique was comparable to rare metals of the same level, he still felt somewhat apprehensive, and couldn't help but retreat, pulling apart the distance between them. Ha ha ha, within 10 moves, I'll make you bow down. The youngster laughed loudly, and pushed out palm after palm, as if he was a supreme being that could split open the heavens and split the earth, his battle prowess instantly increasing by a large margin. Unless the level of brute force surpassed the level of origin power, then definitely pulling apart the distance was the way to go, but this kind of person with super brute force basically didn't exist in the vast lands. The other party was very smart, and although he was arrogant, he wasn't stupid at all. Although he previously expressed his disdain towards Ling Han, he completely didn't tangle with Ling Han in close combat, which wasn't his strongest area. Those that cultivated origin power obviously had to pull apart the distance, and use martial arts to their heart's content. Ling Han was suppressed, but it wasn't that he didn't have the ability to turn the tables. What he was most proficient in was sword techniques, but the demon birth sword hadn't been unleashed, and the mysterious 3000 hadn't been unleashed, these were his trump cards. Moreover, this was the middle state, and who knew if the mysterious 3000 would be recognized, and what if the old monster of the Heaven's Sword sect was provoked? Stop! A cold snort sounded, and a displeased voice came from the palace above. Where do you think this is, that you can be so impudent? This shout was full of authority, and Ling Han and the youngster immediately stopped at the same time. Arrogance needed the occasion, or else it wouldn't be arrogance, but idiocy. The person who shouted was at least in the deity transformation tier, and no matter how freakish Ling Han and the youngster were, they would definitely be suppressed in minutes upon encountering such an existence. Whoever didn't listen was asking for a beating, and Ling Han and the youngster obviously didn't want to be beaten. That youngster was still arrogant, and glanced disdainfully at Ling Han, no longer paying attention, and turned to Hellion Sun Shui, saying, I'm Xianyuan Ziguang, I've fucked you, be my woman. So he was Xianyuan Ziguang. No wonder he was so strong. Hellion Sun Shui hurriedly hid behind Ling Han, then stuck out her pretty face, and stuck out her tongue at Xianyuan Ziguang, feeling that this person was really inexplicable and annoying. Meanwhile, Ling Han looked at Xianyuan Ziguang with a sympathetic gaze. This guy thought so highly of himself, but didn't know that this adorably silly woman was a heaven-tier existence. Although she's lost her memory now, she'll recover one day, and when that time comes, you'll be in trouble. Seeing this, Xianyuan Ziguang's gaze toward Ling Han couldn't help but carry a strong murderous intent. The woman he fucked was actually so intimate with another man, and he couldn't stand it. He definitely had to kill this man, or else he wouldn't be able to erase the knot in his heart. Leave this place, and you'll be a dead man, he said, pointing at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, Fine, wait for me here for the rest of your life. Xianyuan Ziguang choked. He didn't expect Ling Han to be so shameless. He snorted, and said, I'll wait for you. Chapter 549. Xianyuan Ziguang turned to leave, but before he could take more than a few steps, he heard Ling Han whisper, idiot. He couldn't help but turn around with a cold glint in his eyes, and said sternly, what did you say? Oh, I said you're an idiot. I didn't think you actually had self-awareness and knew I was calling you, Ling Han said with a smile. Xianyuan Ziguang was instantly furious, his killing intent boiling as it rose from the top of his head and turned into flames. There were visions of true dragons and phoenixes, white tigers, and black tigers surging, showing this young man's terrifying strength. He was really strong, perhaps not inferior to Sword Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. As long as you leave this place, I'll definitely take your head, he said coldly, filled with determination. Then idiot, just wait. When I'm in a good mood, I'll take your life, Ling Han said lazily. As a heaven-tier elite in his previous life, no matter how strong the youngsters of this generation were, they couldn't truly be viewed as opponents by him. In his mind, the people he had to surpass were Sword Emperor, Setting Sun Saber Emperor, and the others who had already entered the realm of gods. Xianyuan Ziguang didn't argue with Ling Han anymore, it was meaningless and only a waste of time. He snorted, waved his sleeves, and strode off. This time, Ling Han didn't mutter anymore. He pondered whether to pick up some of Xianyuan Ziguang's hair and put it in the vial of curses. However, once one reached the flower blossom tier, they'd already left the mortal world. Their hair wouldn't fall, and the growth of their nails could be controlled. Only beasts would continue to grow, because they walked the path of body cultivators. Thus, it was actually quite difficult to get the hair of a flower blossom tier cultivator. Whatever, he was only in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier, and as long as his tier went up a few more levels, killing him wouldn't be a difficult matter. Let's go, I'll first arrange a place for you guys to stay, Yin Hong said with a smile on her face. When Ling Han and Xianyuan Ziguang clashed, she was obviously secretly pleased. This way, the possibility of Ling Han helping her with all his strength was higher. Is it really good for you to gloat so much? Ling Han teased. If I want to, what can you do about it? Yin Hong puffed out her chest. Boorish, Ling Han said disdainfully. The 5 of them entered the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Yin Hong showed her identity and was invited into the huge building complex behind the main hall. However, the North region was the place where the level of martial art was the weakest. Naturally, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's branch in the North region also had the lowest status. Yin Hong's momentum here was obviously weaker. Just wait until I get first place in the competition. What else do you have to say then? She said angrily. Big Brother Han, that Xianyuan Ziguang's strength is indeed extraordinary, you can't be careless, Zhu Xian said softly to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded and said, don't worry, I won't be afraid of anyone, but I won't underestimate any genius either. Honestly speaking, his current strength is indeed above mine, but he's dreaming if he wants to kill me. On this point, he was completely confident, he really had too many trump cards. Oh, right. I want to ask you something, Ling Han said to Yin Hong. Do you know of Boundless Mountain? What mountain? Yin Hong asked blankly. Boundless Mountain. Che, I've only lived in the Middle State for a few years, and the Middle State is so big, so how would I know where Boundless Mountain is? Wait, I'll find someone to ask for you. Yin Hong left hurriedly, but not long after, she came back hurriedly, and said, damn brat. Are you messing with me? I've asked many people, and no one has ever heard of such a mountain. Ling Han frowned. After 10,000 years, it was actually very normal for the names of places to change, but here came the problem. The Middle State was so big, so how could he possibly visit all the mountains? Hey, I'm talking to you, are you messing with me? Yin Hong asked very fiercely. Watch your words, be careful or you won't be able to get married in the future, Ling Han warned. Hey, I have big breasts, it's easy to get married. Yin Hong sneered. You guys stay here first. Oh, right, try not to get into conflict with Xianyuan Ziguang. Sigh, the South region actually invited such a monster, so we won't be able to get many points in the martial arts competition. Ling Han laughed, and said, I have a way. What way? You think of a way to get a strand of Xianyuan Ziguang's hair, and I'll make a straw doll to curse him, guaranteeing that his strength will be greatly reduced, and he won't be able to defeat Xian Er, Ling Han said with a smile. Che. Yin Hong rolled her eyes, this brat was messing with her again. I'm leaving, you guys rest. However, take it easy, after all, there's only a month until the competition, don't break your bodies. Get lost. After Yin Hong left, the three girls each found their own rooms and put down their luggage, though they didn't have much luggage, they had the Black Tower, and each of them had a spatial ring. Ling Han, on the other hand, continued to ponder about the matters of infinite boundless mountain. In his last life, he'd heard of the boundless mountain, but hadn't been there, and only knew that it was somewhere in the middle state. Since that was the case, he could first find the approximate location, and then slowly search. In the past, it was searching for a needle in a haystack, but now it was fishing for a needle in a lake. Though it was still very slow, it was much better than blindly strolling around the entire middle state. The guest rooms of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion were quite high class, and there was even a map of the middle state in the room, but it wasn't very accurate, and only some large regions were marked. Many small cities and mountain ranges didn't even have names. Ling Han tried hard to recall and compare, and finally used his finger to forcefully tap on the map. It's here, Flying Flower County. The middle state was too big, so it was divided into 36 counties, and Flying Flower County was one of them. However, though the area was shrunk 36 times, Flying Flower County was still incredibly large, at least larger than the desolate north. It was difficult to find a specific mountain here. Hopefully, there aren't many mountains in Flying Flower County, Ling Han thought. It was impossible to compare carefully on this map, so Ling Han called over a servant, telling him to purchase a map of Flying Flower County. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion claimed to be able to buy anything, so one could basically buy anything without leaving their residence. As long as one had money. Before long, the servant returned, saying that there were 3 grades of maps. Ordinary maps could be purchased with money, mid-grade maps required 1-star essence crystals, and high-grade maps required 2-star essence crystals, and as many as 10 of them at that. As Ling Han secretly cursed the Spirit Treasures Pavilion for being black-hearted, he still gave the servant 10 pieces of 2-star essence crystals and told him to hurry and buy them. After another while, the map was delivered. Selling a map for 10 essence crystals, and a 2-star one at that, there naturally had to be something valuable about it. First of all, the materials used for this map were very precious. It was drawn on the body of a clear dragon scaled turtle, using a complete turtle shell. The clear dragon scaled turtle wasn't a high-grade demonic beast, but its shell had a special ability, and that was that it could expand and contract at will. It could expand to a maximum of 100 meters, and could shrink to the size of a palm at the smallest. Because of this, the clear dragon scaled turtle was hunted in large numbers, and the number of this kind of demonic beast was pitifully low. Ling Han walked into the courtyard, raised his hand, and the small turtle shell in his hand immediately enlarged, showing the mountains and rivers. Chapter 550. Zi Shuexian left a message at the most dangerous moment, saying that she had left all the secrets in the Boundless Mountain's Clear Harmony Palace Hall. He was very curious what she meant when she said that these tens of thousands of years were all lies. This definitely wasn't her going crazy. Something that could make a shattering void tier cultivator become enemies with her own clansmen, even sacrificing herself to pass on the secrets, could possibly be shockingly related. Since he had come to the middle state, finding the secrets left behind by Zi Shuexian naturally became a top priority. The tortoise shell was enlarged to 100 meters in size, and weighed several tens of thousands of kilograms, but Ling Han's physical strength was too terrifying. He could easily lift it with one hand, and didn't need to use origin power at all. He looked at the map, and tried hard to compare it with his memory, eliminating impossible mountains and rivers. There are still as many as 21. Ling Han shook his head. He could only eliminate so many, and there were still 21 mountain ranges that matched the description in his memory. After all, he had never been there before, and being able to narrow down the scope to this extent was already not bad. Should I go now, or wait until after the tournament? Ling Han pondered. Finding the Clear Harmony Palace Hall is definitely not something that can be done in a day or two. Since I promised to help with the tournament, I obviously can't go back on my word. Fine, I'll go after the tournament. However, will I stay in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion for this month? Right, Yin Hong said that recently, many people came out from the ancient site, and it's very likely that they have treasures that they don't need, and will sell them at the auction. Then, when will the auction start? What a coincidence, there would be one tonight, and it was a once-a-month large-scale auction. And after another month, there would be the once-a-year super auction. It would be very grand, and there would be many treasures. It was said that sometimes, even deity transformation tier and heaven tier elites would appear. However, the once-a-month large-scale auction required an invitation to enter, so Ling Han found Yin Hong and asked her to help him get an invitation. Thinking about it, though Yin Hong's position in the Middle States Spirit Treasures Pavilion was not high, getting an invitation should not be a problem. However, things did not go as expected. Yin Hong actually returned empty-handed. How infuriating! Yin Hong's face was full of anger as soon as she entered the room. Yin Chi, that bitch, actually dared to block me. She didn't even give me an invitation and kept talking nonsense with me. Ling Han frowned and said, I can't get it. Yin Hong sat to one side in displeasure, and said helplessly, that bitch is holding me back. She won't give it to me. Does she have a grudge against you? Ling Han asked. You can say that. Yin Hong thought about it. She's just jealous that my breasts are bigger than hers, hee hee. Ling Han naturally wouldn't believe it. She is my third uncle's daughter, and my third uncle doesn't have a good relationship with my father. She told the truth. Ling Han nodded. Family grudges. I'll think of another way to get you an invitation, Yin Hong said again. Ling Han shook his head and said, I'll think of a way myself. You. What can you do now? Yin Hong did not believe him. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, don't forget my true identity. Yin Hong was shocked, and said, no way, are you sure you want to take such a risk? This isn't called taking a risk, but rather reducing the risk. Ling Han smiled. He decided to appear with his original identity. Was a heaven-grade alchemist not qualified to participate in the auction? And no matter what good things he bought at the auction, everyone would only stare at Ling Han, and not Han Lin. Because once the auction ended, Ling Han would disappear, and be replaced by Han Lin. TSK, safe. Making up his mind, Ling Han also became leisurely. When it was dinner time, he took out the ingredients from the Black Tower to share with the girls, which naturally made everyone eat to their heart's content, especially Helian Sun Shua and Yin Hong. They hadn't eaten much, and fought over the food without caring about their image as virtuous ladies. Moreover, they weren't virtuous ladies. One lost her memory, and the other kept saying, I'll sleep with you, all day long. Where would they have any restraint? Give me this every day, and I'll even throw myself at you, the female pervert said. Ling Han obviously pretended not to hear. He left the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, quietly removing the disguise on his face, returning to his original appearance, and then strode towards the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. This pavilion is not open at night, and only receives special guests. He had just walked up the stairs when he was blocked by someone. Ling Han directly revealed his identity, and said, I am Ling Han, a heaven-grade alchemist. Does this count as a special guest? What? That person was obviously stunned by the words heaven-grade alchemist. After a slight hesitation, he hurriedly said, Please wait a moment, esteemed guest. Allow this lowly one to immediately report. He hurriedly ran up like a wisp of smoke. There were obviously other people responsible for maintaining order here. At this time, the auction was about to begin, and many people passed by one after another. There were middle-aged men with majestic gait, and there were also unfathomable old men, as well as youths full of vigor and heroic bearing. They naturally all had invitations, and were accepted one by one. Some people saw Ling Han waiting at the bottom of the stairs, and instantly looked disdainful. This beggar wanted to enter without an invitation. Where did this beggar come from? Hey, brat, kneel down and call me grandpa, and I'll bring you in to see how it goes. There would always be people with cheap mouths, not taking Ling Han's flower blossom tier cultivation seriously. In the middle state, flower blossom tier cultivators really weren't that strong. Ling Han's gaze turned cold, and he said, Such a cheap mouth, aren't you afraid of causing trouble for your family? This was a profligate young man in his 20s. He was only in the spiritual ocean tier, yet he had the arrogance of, I'm ranked 3rd in the world. Damn brat, do you know who I am? The profligate young man said proudly. My surname is Sunday, oh, grandson. Ling Han nodded. Fuck. The profligate young man instantly jumped up in anger. This youngster was too mean. Young master's son, don't be angry. He's just a brat from the countryside. Moreover, this is the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, so it's not convenient to fight. Someone immediately tried to mediate. It was the profligate young man's scoundrel friend. The profligate young man snorted, flicked his sleeves, and said, Consider yourself lucky, or else I'll chop you into pieces. Ling Han shook his head. This kind of trash was better to be killed with a single finger. He, a heaven-grade alchemist, was already targeted by countless people anyway, so he wasn't afraid of one or two more. The 5 dragons and 2 phoenixes are here. Really, this aura is really too shocking. It was at this moment that there was a sudden commotion in the crowd. Everyone looked towards the back, and saw a group of 7 people striding over. There were a total of 5 men and 2 women, and every one of them was only 24 or 25 years old. However, every one of them had the bearing of dragons and phoenixes among men, and every one of them was in the flower blossom tier. As expected of the middle state, there were actually so many flower blossom tier cultivators below the age of 30. And this was only Million Treasures City, not ancient sects like the Heaven Sword sect and the Cloud Phoenix sect. It was really unknown how strong of a genius they had. The 5 dragons and 2 phoenixes were the 7 most outstanding people in the younger generation of Million Treasures City, and they were all disciples of the city's great clans. If it weren't for that, without sufficient cultivation resources, no matter how much of a genius you were, you wouldn't be able to advance into the flower blossom tier before the age of 30 by yourself. These 7 people walked proudly, and every one of them exuded an aura of invincible confidence. A dragon saw Ling Han, and could not help but look surprised. I never thought that there would actually be such a young flower blossom tier cultivator. Ha, brat, become my follower. Chapter 551. Third Elder, what's the point of talking nonsense with him? Kill him, and the mystical power will be ours. Zhou Yuqing hooted from the side. That's true. Zhou De Yuan nodded, and strode towards Ling Han. The aura of the deity transformation tier spread out. This was not only a deterrent to Ling Han, but also a deterrent to the others. His meaning was that this brat was his cup of tea, and they had better think twice before making a move. Ling Han looked at the 2 members of the Zhou clan, and his killing intent involuntarily boiled. Previously, because of Zhou De Yuan's attack, he had missed the opportunity to use the earth overturning seal. If it were not for the fact that he still had one more chance, even if he tore Zhou De Yuan's body into 1,000 pieces, so what? Previously, he had not bothered to settle the score with them, and now that they had delivered themselves to his doorstep, what need was there for Ling Han to be polite? He smiled calmly, and said, as the saying goes, the bird that sticks out gets shot. The others did not move, and only you two idiots jumped out. If this is not seeking death, then what is? Insolence. In front of the third elder, how dare you be so arrogant? Zhou Yuqing pointed at him. If it were not for the fact that his cultivation level was inferior, he really wanted to charge over and tear Ling Han to shreds. Zhou De Yuan's gaze was also dark. He stretched out his right hand, and multiple patterns intertwined, forming a brilliant light. He gave a cold humph, and grabbed out at Ling Han. Origin power condensed, and turned into an even larger palm. It descended from the skies, and slapped down towards Ling Han. It was incomparably swift and fierce, and its purpose was to take Ling Han's life. Ling Han stood still, and waited until the large palm slapped down. Only then did he move. A flash of sword ray slashed out, and this large palm was sliced into two, its brilliance completely dissipating. Ah! Zhou De Yuan could not help but humph. Using his left hand to support his right hand, he saw that there was shockingly a wound on his right palm, and fresh blood was flowing out. Pa, 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 the blood dripped onto the ground, causing the earth to tremble. The blood of a martial artist in the deity transformation tier was definitely a precious medicine. If it came across an unscrupulous alchemist, it could even be plucked and used as medicine. Zhou De Yuan hurriedly used his origin power to stop the loss of blood, but he shockingly discovered that there was a terrifying sword intent circulating in the wound. The moment his origin power surged over, it was shattered, and actually sealed the wound innumerable times. Blood was still flowing. How could this be possible? How could this brat's battle prowess be so strong? One sword strike was enough to wound him so severely. Zhou De Yuan could not believe it. A mere junior in the spiritual infant tier had been slashed by him previously, and he had already lowered his head and admitted defeat, not even daring to show his anger. If Ling Han was really so strong, then what the hell was he supposed to endure? Third elder. Zhou Yuqing called out, a bit shakily. In his mind, the 4 grand elders of the clan should all be existences that could sweep through the world, so how could they possibly suffer a loss at the hands of a brat? Zhou De Yuan was the source of his arrogance, and also the source of his confidence. Now that the third elder had actually been wounded by a single sword strike from Ling Han, it instantly made him want to retreat. He was afraid that there would be a chance. Old dog, you insist on seeking death, so I can only fulfill your wish. Ling Han did not draw out the Revere Life Sword or the Demon Birth Sword. Just now, he had merely waved his fingers together, but had used the mystical power of the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven. It was precisely this mystical power that wreaked havoc in the other's wound, not allowing the other's wound to heal easily. I'm going to kill you. Zhou De Yuan roared. He drew out his saber, and brandished it in a slash towards Ling Han. Xiao, a flash of saber light slashed out. It was as long as a few dozen meters, and it turned into a furious dragon. Ling Han also drew his sword. After all, the other was in existence in the peak stage of the deity transformation tier. That previous strike could be said to have hit the other's carelessness, but it was indeed not to be underestimated. What he drew out was the Demon Birth Sword. To deal with someone like Zhou De Yuan, the Demon Birth Sword was enough. If the Demon Birth Sword still had a tool spirit, it would definitely feel very wronged. I'm also a dignified level 10 spirit tool, yet I'm actually going to be reduced to killing someone in the deity transformation tier. Shua, sword ray shot out, but it was only about 3 meters long. The power of ray was determined by its length and thickness. The longer and thicker it was, the more terrifying its destructive power would be. Thus, when the ray that Ling Han shot out was only 3 meters long, Zhou Deyuan's heart immediately calmed down, and Zhou Yucheng's confidence also recovered. He actually doubted his own ancestor, he really thought too highly of that brat. Pooh! Sword ray and saber ray collided. Pooh! Saber ray actually split into two right down the middle. The two halves of saber ray still swept over according to their original trajectory, but they separately streaked past Ling Han's left and right sides. They didn't even need to give way. However, sword ray was like a peerless divine weapon, and continued to sweep towards Zhou Deyuan. Zhou Deyuan was greatly shocked, and hurriedly leaped up to dodge. His face was filled with shock. How could this be? In terms of quality, his saber ray was actually so much inferior to Ling Han's sword ray, and in a direct confrontation, it was completely destroyed by Ling Han's sword ray. It was really like a broken wooden sword coming into contact with a real sword, it would be destroyed upon contact. He couldn't help but tremble slightly. Indeed, the thicker and longer sword ray was, the better it would be, and its destructive power would be greater. However, just like sword chi, sword ray also depended on two other factors, the martial artist's comprehension and the grade of the weapon used. That sword, Zhou Deyuan absolutely did not believe that Ling Han's comprehension of the way of the sword far surpassed his grasp of the way of the saber. Then, there was only one explanation. The grade of the spirit tool in Ling Han's hands was too high, causing the sword ray that was shot out to be incomparably swift and fierce. In terms of quality, not only did it make up for the gap of a major tier, it was also able to turn the tables and crush him. Ha, this is also mine. He made up his mind, and thought that Ling Han had relied on the advantage of the spirit tool, and not because of his own strength, although spirit tools were also a part of one's strength. He once again charged out, and used his movement technique. He wanted to use a dazzling speed to make Ling Han brandish his sword for nothing, and then he would kill Ling Han with another strike, and seize that treasured sword and mystical power. Ling Han stood still, as if he couldn't catch sight of his figure at all. Zhou Deyuan couldn't help but be overjoyed. In a flash, he had already appeared behind Ling Han, and suddenly slashed out with his saber, slashing towards Ling Han's neck. Die, die! Shua, the saber slashed out. Zhou Deyuan was delighted at first, but then he was greatly shocked. There was actually no trace of Ling Han in front of him. Instantly, a strong sense of unease welled up in his heart. Sure enough, a voice rang out behind him, saying, "What, looking for me?" He was so shocked that even his anus tightened, and cold sweat instantly poured down his entire body like a waterfall. He hurriedly turned around, and brandished his saber in a slash. Shua, the saber flashed, piercingly cold and eerie. However, it missed again. Could it be? Just when Zhou Deyuan's heart and liver were about to split apart, a voice rang out behind him again. "I'm not going to play with you anymore." No. Zhou Deyuan was just about to shout, "Pu," he felt a chill on his back. He then felt the tip of a sword pierce through his chest, and his heart had already been pierced through. He was both furious and shocked. He was actually being played by Ling Han like a cat toying with a mouse, but a cold smirk appeared at the corners of his lips. "You're too weak. A deity transformation tier cultivator, how could he possibly die so easily when he has reached such a high level? His life force was too strong, so what if his heart exploded? He could use origin power to condense it, and then take a life-saving precious medicine, and he would still be able to live. But your sword pierced through my body, and I brandished my saber again, how are you going to dodge?" Zhou Deyuan wanted to turn around and brandish his saber, but the origin power he immediately unleashed was like floodwater that had opened the floodgates. It actually poured out like a fountain, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't condense it. Pa! He didn't even have the strength to hold the saber. The treasured saber fell, and the tip of the saber smashed down, actually forcibly slicing off half of his right foot. What was the difference between a deity transformation tier cultivator who had lost the protection of origin power and a body refining tier cultivator? Chapter 552. The 5 dragons all had powerful backgrounds. If they were asked to fight the Spirit Treasure's pavilion head-on, they definitely wouldn't dare, but if it was just beating up a person at the main gate or on the steps, they believed that the Spirit Treasure's pavilion wouldn't hold on to this point and not let them off. They were still confident that they had this bit of face. The 5 dragons all stared at Ling Han, their eyes sinister. This young man's impertinence made them very displeased. Ling Han clasped his hands behind his back, smiled, and said, "If you want to fight, then you'd better think carefully. Later, you'll have to kneel before me and beg for mercy, depending on my mood." Ha ha ha. The 5 dragons all laughed coldly. Did this young man completely not know how the word death was written? The bystanders also laughed loudly. They'd seen many arrogant people, but it was the first time they'd seen Ling Han being so unconfident and arrogant. Reckless. Jia Zhang attacked. They were the mighty 5 dragons, so they naturally disdained to join forces. However, being able to be listed as one of the 5 dragons, his strength was naturally extraordinary. As he stretched out his hand, vein-like patterns intertwined, forming a golden divine light. It was as if it wasn't a human's arm, but a golden divine dragon's claw. Ling Han seemed to be struck dumb, completely unresponsive. Everyone shook their heads. He was so awesome, so what other powerful strength did he have? It turned out that he was actually so weak that he couldn't even withstand a single blow. The dragon's claw struck, and a terrifying pressure shook, even the skin of a low-level flower blossom tier cultivator would be torn apart. Ling Han finally attacked. No, he attacked with his foot, kicking towards Jia Zhang's front. The timing of this kick could be said to be perfect, and it just happened to avoid Jia Zhang's attack. Moreover, if Jia Zhang paid more attention to Ling Han, he definitely wouldn't attack at close range, at least he wouldn't be so rash in his first attack. However, he was careless, thinking that it would be a piece of cake, and this kick directly delivered itself to his face. How could a hand be as long as a foot? Thus, before Jia Zhang's attack could reach Ling Han, he would first be kicked solidly by this kick. Jia Zhang gave a muffled humph, and hurriedly tilted his head, barely dodging this kick. After all, he was one of the 5 dragons, a well-known figure among the younger generation, so he wasn't that weak. He hurriedly retreated, feeling a burning pain on his face. He couldn't help but stretch out his hand to touch his face. To his surprise, he discovered that his hand was stained with blood. He dodged Ling Han's kick, but the strong wind that blew past him was like a blade. He had not formed body of iron sheet, so how could he possibly feel good after being brushed by the aftermath of a flower blossom tier martial artist's attack? Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Jia Zhang, one of the 5 dragons, had actually suffered a loss from a single strike. Although it was just a scratch and would not affect his battle prowess, among those of the same age level, how many people could injure Jia Zhang? Even if Jia Zhang was careless, Ling Han's strength had to be strong enough. "I've really underestimated you." Jia Zhang wiped away the bloodstains on his face. His eyes were slightly red. He was truly angry now. However, Ling Han said, "I'm not weaker than you. I only have this little bit of strength." Damn, too arrogant. Not only was Jia Zhang furious, the other 4 dragons could not tolerate it either. They were the 5 dragons, and Jia Zhang being belittled was equivalent to them being dragged down as well. Naturally, they were displeased and dissatisfied. Again, Jia Zhang said coldly. This time, he would learn his lesson, and would no longer engage in close-quarters combat with Ling Han. A martial artist had cultivated qi, and this was the most powerful weapon. How could he possibly unleash the full might of qi if he was in close-quarters combat? Grandmaster Ling. It was at this moment that a shout was heard from the top of the stairs. Tang, 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 a short and round fatty ran down from above. This person was really too fat, so fat that he did not even reach his legs. Thus, everyone looked like a meatball rolling down from the stage. This was undoubtedly very funny, but no one could laugh, because this was a heavyweight figure of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. His figure was heavyweight, and his identity was similarly heavyweight. 7th Pavilion Master, Yin Shuiyang. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion of the Middle State had a total of 9 Pavilion Masters. These were truly powerful figures that could stand on equal footing with the leaders and grand elders of ancient sections. These 9 Pavilion Masters were all elites of the Heaven Tier. It was said that there were Shattering Void Tier elites overseeing the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, but no one had ever seen one. A dignified elite of the Heaven Tier actually personally appeared to welcome a Grand Master Ling. Then what kind of existence would this Grand Master Ling be? Earth-grade high-level alchemist. No. Earth-grade high-level alchemists probably did not have such qualifications. They had to be heaven-grade alchemists, but the problem was that there were not only 2 heaven-grade alchemists in this world, and neither of them had the surname Ling, alright? Wait, there was indeed a heaven-grade alchemist with the surname Ling, but he came from the North region, and it was said that he even obtained the inheritance of the 12 palaces, and knew the whereabouts of a divine treasure trove. This heaven-grade alchemist had also come. Where was he? Everyone craned their necks to look around. Naturally, none of them thought of Ling Han. He was too young, so how could such a youngster possibly be some grandmaster? The meatball rolled down, and the people along the way hurriedly moved out of the way. However, this meatball rolled too quickly, and some people could not dodge in time and were instantly sent flying, dancing in the air like scarecrows. But Yin Shuiyang did not have the slightest intention of stopping. This was the Heaven Tier, they could be so willful. The 5 dragons were all shocked, and hurriedly moved to the side of the road. They did not have the slightest qualification to challenge a Heaven Tier elite. Not to mention them, even if the person with the highest status in their clan came, when they saw Yin Shuiyang, they could only obediently listen. Thus, if they were to be sent flying, then they could only blame it on their bad luck. But Ling Han did not dodge or evade. Hiss, who did this brat really think he was? If he was killed by a Heaven Tier elite, he would definitely die in vain. Who asked him to be so blind? The meatball's speed was too fast, and in an instant, it had already closed in on Ling Han. Everyone shook their heads. Obviously, Ling Han was also going to be sent flying. But at this moment, the meatball, Yin Shuiyang suddenly braked and stopped in front of Ling Han. A smile appeared on his round face, and because he was too fat, his neck could not be reached at all. It was as if a large ball was on top of a small ball, extremely comical. No one dared to laugh. To laugh at a Heaven Tier elite's appearance in front of his face, that was truly seeking death. Ling Han, however, laughed loudly. With each laugh, everyone's lips twitched, feeling a chill rise from the bottom of their hearts. Later, Yin Shuiyang better not fly into a rage. If a Heaven Tier elite flew into a rage, then blood would flow like a river. Unexpectedly, Yin Shuiyang also laughed along with him, and he seemed to be quite happy. Master Ling has graced us with your presence, please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Yin Shuiyang bowed. Everyone felt a strong sense of dizziness. A dignified Heaven Tier elite actually bowed to a mere flower blossom tier, were their eyes blurred? And Master Ling, this guy was Ling Han. The 5 dragons' expressions immediately became extremely ugly. Chapter 553. This youngster was actually a heaven-grade alchemist. What kind of joke was this? However, a mighty Heaven Tier elite wouldn't deliberately put on such a show just to tease them juniors, then they really thought too highly of themselves. Everyone couldn't help but think of what Ling Han said before. Later, even if Jia Zhang and the others knelt before him and kowtowed in apology, Ling Han might not even pay attention. At that time, it sounded like a wild boast, but now, everyone believed it without a doubt. Heaven-grade alchemist, what kind of awesome existence was that even heaven-tier elites had to kneel down to greet? The importance of their identity and status was evident. A mere flower blossom tier junior really wasn't even fit to carry their shoes. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "You're too polite, how should I address you?" How big of a shot was this guy, and even Yin Shuiyang came out to greet him, yet he didn't even know who he was. This was an act. Ha ha ha, Yin Shuiyang, I'm the 7th Pavilion Master of Spirit Treasures Pavilion. If Grandmaster Ling doesn't mind, you can call me Little Yang, Yin Shuiyang said with a smile. Everyone instantly felt a chill run down their spine. With this guy's physique, who could call him Little Yang? However, how many people in this world had the right to call him Little Yang? Aside from a few supreme shattering void tier beings, there were probably only a few high-level heaven tier elites. 7th Pavilion Master. Ling Han also felt a chill run down his spine, and couldn't call him Little Yang no matter what. Grandmaster Ling wants to participate in today's auction? Yin Shuiyang asked. Exactly. Ling Han nodded. Please, please. Yin Shuiyang hurriedly made a gesture of invitation. Ling Han walked forward, and instantly made everyone, especially Jia Zhang and that profligate young master, feel relieved. However, Ling Han stopped again, and said to Yin Shuiyang, 7th Pavilion Master, if I settle a score with a few people, would it appear as the strong bullying the weak? Yin Shuiyang's expression immediately darkened, and he said, "Oh, could it be that someone offended Grandmaster Ling? He, one wants to call him Grandpa, another wants me to be his follower, and a few of them want to beat me up," said Ling Han with a smile. Hearing him say so, Jia Zhang, Wu Long, and that profligate young master were about to cry. How could they have known before that Ling Han was a heaven-grade alchemist? Otherwise, even if they were given 10,000 guts, they would not dare to say such words. Who is it? Yin Shuiyang's gaze swept over, and a frightening pressure instantly swept over him. At this moment, he was no longer an amiable fatty, but an elite of the heaven tier who could make heaven and earth tremble with a stomp of his foot. Everyone felt their souls trembling, and they couldn't muster up any will to resist. Ling Han nodded to himself. This fatty's cultivation base was likely at level 4 or 5 of the sky human stage. Ling Han himself was incapable of sensing it. At any rate, he only possessed a strand of the divine sense of a sky human stage cultivator. Jia Zhang and the other 4, as well as that profligate young master, all stood up, trembling, and knelt on the ground, saying, "We beg for Grandmaster Ling's forgiveness." Ling Han, however, acted as if he hadn't seen them, and started to talk with Yin Shuiyang without any substance, obviously giving Jia Zhang, Wu Long, and that profligate young master the cold shoulder. Indeed, they all knelt down, but whether or not they accepted their apologies depended on Ling Han's mood. The 5 dragons looked at each other, hardened their hearts, and started to slap their own faces. When the profligate young master saw this, he hurriedly kowtowed as if pounding onions, really afraid that Yin Shuiyang would kill them all in a fit of rage. Grandmaster Ling, the auction is about to begin, why don't you go inside and take a seat? Yin Shuiyang said. He didn't want so many people to gather at the entrance of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. After all, it wasn't a good influence. Ling Han only smiled at Jia Zhang, Wu Long, and that profligate young master, walked up the stairs, and entered the main hall. Jia Zhang, Wu Long, and that profligate young master broke out in a cold sweat. Although Ling Han didn't blame them, offending a heaven-grade alchemist wouldn't end up so easily. Under Yin Shuiyang's lead, Ling Han came to a private room, which was also the most luxurious private room in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. At present, only Ling Han received such an honor on this floor. Normally, this kind of top-class private room would only be used for special auctions that would be held once every decade or so. It was specially reserved for shattering void tier elites and existences with similar statuses, such as heaven-grade alchemists. Towards this kind of empty reputation, Ling Han was already very indifferent. He wasn't startled by the honor and sat down in the private room. As expected, the auction only took a short while before it began. After Yin Shuiyang accompanied Ling Han for a while, he bid farewell and left, and very generously gave Ling Han an overdraft limit of 100,000 three-star origin crystals. In reality, a heaven-grade alchemist's net worth would be more than this amount, so why was the limit set by the other party so low? It was simple. Perhaps Shattering Void tier elites wouldn't care about the inheritance of the 12 palaces, but the divine treasure trove was too important. If he was targeted by a Shattering Void tier elite, then Ling Han would definitely be doomed. Thus, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion naturally wouldn't invest too much on this unstable point. To be able to give a limit of 100,000 three-star origin crystals, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was actually very, very generous. Ling Han sat. One item after another was auctioned off, but there were also some that weren't sold. As expected of the once-a-month large-scale auction, there were many items of all kinds, but Ling Han didn't bat an eye at any of them. On the other hand, there was an auction like this once a month, so there couldn't be too many precious items. Perhaps, after another month, there would be shocking treasures taken out in the end-of-year super auction. Ha ha ha, a sudden burst of laughter sounded in the auction hall. Ling Han was originally sleepy, but after hearing such a loud commotion, he couldn't help but go over, only to see that the auctioneer was actually holding a brick. Ling Han also wanted to laugh, but then he thought that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion wouldn't go overboard and use a brick to fool people, so he went over carefully. This actually wasn't a brick, but its shape was very similar. However, if he looked closely, he would discover that the edges were irregular, as if it had originally belonged to another gigantic stone, and now it had been knocked off. One side of the brick was flat, but the other side actually had half a word, or perhaps just a few remnant strokes, but he couldn't tell what exactly it was. This brick has been carefully examined by several great appraisers of our pavilion, but they couldn't analyze its specific structure or use. They can only confirm that this was once on a stone tablet, and has at least 100,000 years of history. Additionally, this stone is very hard, and it was obtained from some ancient site. The auctioneer introduced. He seemed to be unable to find the merits of this brick, and could only brag as much as he could. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, but still could not see anything special about this brick. Only those few words on it made him feel as if something had come alive in his heart. Somewhat interesting. The starting price is 10 origin crystals, the auctioneer said. Obviously, he didn't have much hope for this item. 20. 50. 100. Although he temporarily didn't know what use this brick had, in at least 100,000 years of history, there were still many people who were willing to take it back and collect it. 1,000. Ling Han opened his mouth. If the quality of the origin crystal was not specified, then it was only 1 star. To Ling Han, a 1-star origin crystal was really not a big deal. 2,000. Someone made a bid, and it actually sounded somewhat familiar. Chapter 554. Mu Fei Yao. Ling Han suddenly remembered. The people of the Cold Spear Association, which he suspected had been founded by his disciple, had once fought to the death with an old man for the sake of an alchemy furnace that he had once used, spending money like flowing water. He had not thought that she would also come, and on this brick at that. Wait, she wouldn't be purposefully bickering with him, right? The Cold Spear Association supported the Ling Han of 10,000 years ago, and was naturally filled with malice towards the Ling Han who had appeared now, thinking that he was also called Ling Han and was also an alchemist, which was a blasphemy to the Ling Han of 10,000 years ago. So now that she recognized his voice, it was not impossible that she was purposefully bickering with him. Heaven-grade alchemists could cover for the majority of the time, but they were not omnipotent. For example, towards the Cold Spear Association, they worshipped the Ling Han of 10,000 years ago to death, so naturally they would mercilessly look down on the current him. More importantly, the Cold Spear Association seemed to be very rich. 3,000. Ling Han increased the price. 5,000. Mu Fei Yao followed up without hesitation. Granny, didn't he spank her but to her satisfaction before? Why was she opposing him now? 10,000. Ling Han increased the price as well. 20,000. Mu Fei Yao increased the price even more delightedly. In a short while, this broken brick was actually pushed up to the price of 100,000. One had to know that the starting price of this thing was only 10 origin crystals. As expected, even if it was only a piece, as long as there were 2 people who liked it, it could still be sold at a price of gold. Ling Han was not afraid. 1-star and 2-star origin crystals were no longer of much use to him. They were meant to be spent in the first place, and 3-star origin crystals were meant to be saved to increase his cultivation. Thus, as long as it was within this range, he did not mind squandering money like it was dirt. As a heaven-grade alchemist, he really did not care about money at all. She continued bidding, and only when the price reached 1,000,000 origin crystals did Mu Fei Yao finally stop, only smirking coldly. This woman was definitely doing this on purpose. Though Ling Han did not care about money, he was still very displeased that the price was pushed up by someone and he had to spend an extra 1,000,000 origin crystals. In the future, if this woman knew his true identity, the expression on her face would be very funny. He thought maliciously in his heart. When the time came, he would make her kneel and call him Grandmaster. Very soon, the people from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion brought the brick over. With Ling Han's status, he could have put the bill on their tab first, but since he had money in his hands, he didn't want to take advantage of them, so he directly paid with origin crystals. He picked up this brick and examined it closely. This thing was definitely made of stone, but it was really very sturdy. Not only was Ling Han unable to break it, even if he took out the demon birth sword to hack at it, it was useless. He couldn't even leave a mark on it. He wondered what the effect would be if he let Hunyou bite him. With a thought, Ling Han stored the brick into the black tower, and asked through his divine sense, "Small tower, what material is this? Do you think I'm a know-it-all?" Small tower immediately said proudly. "I've lost all of my previous life's memories, so how would I know what this rock that doesn't contain a shred of origin energy is?" Still so proud after losing your memories, Ling Han ridiculed in his heart. Peng, 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 the rock spirit ran over impatiently, staring at the brick with its mouth wide open. If it could drool, it would definitely have formed a river by now. Master, eat, eat. It sent its divine sense to Ling Han. "Alright, I'll give it to you. However, this thing is very hard, so don't break your teeth," Ling Han said indifferently. Although he bought it with 1,000,000 origin crystals, he was never stingy when it came to his own people, though the rock spirit could hardly be called a human. The rock spirit was overjoyed, and hurriedly pounced to bite. With a kacha, it bit down, and actually cracked open the head with brute force. This was because it used too much force, and the brick was too hard. The result was that the brick didn't shatter, but its head was shattered. Fortunately, it could split into many pieces and turn into many small stone people. Moreover, for a rock spirit, the human form was just a form. The head and chest were not vital points at all. They were no different from arms and legs. Thus, countless pieces of rubble immediately flew back, once again gathering on its head and restoring itself. The rock spirit still didn't give up, and started to bite again, but without exception, it couldn't chew through this brick at all. If it used too much force, it would break itself. And after a few times, its recovery speed became slower and slower. Ling Han was a bit worried that it would really torment itself and die here in order to become stronger, so he hurriedly put away the brick, and said, "You can't refine this rock at all now. When you become stronger in the future, I'll give it to you to eat." The rock spirit knelt on the ground with a paw, its arms continuously pounding the ground, causing the ground to tremble as if it was crying bitterly. Ling Han couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. He didn't think that this large rock would be quite human-like, even showing a depressed expression. However, the rock spirit specialized in refining strange rocks, and after it fused with the rocks in the divine temple of the 12 heaven mystery realms, its cultivation increased greatly. It was now in the 7th layer of the flower blossom tier, yet it couldn't even refine a tiny bit of the brick, which showed how high this brick was. He took out the brick again, and observed the few strokes on it. Although he couldn't make out what kind of characters it was, it exuded an air of grandeur, a kind of heaviness that had passed through the ages. He played with it casually, thinking that this thing would be good for smashing people, since it was hard enough. The auction continued, and a few ancient martial arts techniques appeared, obtained from ancient sites. To Ling Han's surprise, there were 2 ancient sites that were actually from the era of his last life, but now became antiques that were being fought over. He couldn't help but feel rueful. He'd dreamt for 10,000 years, and when he woke up, everything was the same, but the people had changed. Looking at the whole world, there was no one he was familiar with anymore. He had to reach the shattering void tier as soon as possible, then shatter this void and become a god, then compete with Sword Emperor and the others. And Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, she liked him but didn't tell him, playing some flirtatious game. He definitely had to spank her but... The auction ended successfully. Because there was still a month until the super auction at the end of the year, the auction items this time weren't all that precious, and the good things would be left for that time. Ling Han knew that the news of his appearance had definitely spread throughout Million Treasures City. At this moment, there might already be heaven-tier elites lying in ambush in the dark, wanting to capture him quietly and force him to reveal the inheritance of the 12 palaces as well as the information regarding the divine treasury. It couldn't be helped. Although he was a heaven-grade alchemist, who told him to rise too quickly and not form his own force? Otherwise, if he had over a dozen heaven-tier elites following him, then apart from shattering void-tier elites, which force would dare provoke him? He exited the private room, and after arriving in a corner, he directly entered into the Black Tower. He changed his appearance, and when he appeared again, he openly blended into the crowd, and swaggered out of the auction house. Then, he calmly returned to his residence, and actually, not a single person became suspicious of him. Who would have thought that he would be hiding in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion? It's called Darkness Under the Lamp. Chapter 555. Multitasking wasn't a difficult thing for martial artists, but to unleash 2 high-level secret techniques to their fullest potential would be difficult. Ling Han first began to deduce the earth-overturning seal so that it could be unleashed with a single hand. The difficulty wasn't in the technique. In truth, mystical powers didn't have techniques, or at least that was the case for the 4 mystical powers that Ling Han had learned. Mystical powers mostly taught you how to circulate origin power and conform to a certain specific pattern, but as for how to unleash it, it was completely up to you. For example, if the earth-overturning seal was unleashed, then both hands would be covered with special vein-like patterns. Its power lay in these vein-like patterns, which possessed an incomparably terrifying destructive power. The annihilating dragon star arrow was the same, concentrating the vein-like patterns on the arrow's body to shoot out a destructive arrow. Thus, this archery technique didn't even need a real bow and arrow. Using one's body as the bow and origin power as the arrow, one could unleash an extremely powerful destructive power. What Ling Han needed to do was to combine the vein-like patterns that were originally distributed on both hands onto one hand. He painstakingly deduced, and time passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed, and he finally revealed a smile. His left hand opened, and the vein-like patterns were densely woven. What was strange was that the demonic patterns actually resonated and combined with the earth-overturning seal. Although the 2 are completely different, why do I discover that there are similarities? Ling Han felt that it was strange. This is the power of regulations. Small tower appeared. Regulations. Ling Han mumbled. Small tower had said long ago that the demonic patterns were formed from the regulations of a realm. He only knew that they were very powerful, but he didn't know why. He said, "Come, explain in detail." "I have no such obligation." Small tower was very proud. However, the so-called mystical powers can all touch the edge of the power of regulations, so you should properly cultivate these mystical powers. It will be of great benefit to you. Even if it didn't say it, he knew. Ling Han was very gloomy. This damned proud tower didn't treat him as its master at all. There would come a day when he would stuff it into a latrine pit and make it reflect on itself properly. He exited the Black Tower, but saw that the great army that the Flame King had originally stationed had already disappeared, and a flag representing the Purple Moon Empire was planted on top of the city walls and not far away. Obviously, the Flame King had already taken down this city, and continued his pace of expansion. Ling Han released everyone from the Black Tower, and headed towards the city. He wanted to scout out the situation. As it turned out, the Lunar King brought another great army over half a month ago, and joined forces with the Flame King. The two great elites launched a fierce attack, and completely defeated the forces guarding the city, forcing the allied forces of the 5 great sects to retreat once again. Recruiting, recruiting. On the streets, a soldier was currently shouting loudly. "Join our Purple Moon Army, and you'll have the chance to learn high-grade martial arts techniques and cultivation techniques. Those who pass by and want to become friends with the elites, you mustn't miss this opportunity." Ling Han couldn't help but want to laugh. Ma Duo Bao wasn't reliable, and the soldiers under his command weren't very reliable either. This recruitment slogan really made one unable to help but laugh. However, using cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques as an enticement, it just so happened to be really attractive. Many people were stuck in a certain cultivation level. It wasn't because they didn't have enough talent, nor was it because they didn't have enough resources, but because they lacked a higher level cultivation technique. This cultivation technique of mine can only be cultivated up to the deity transformation tier, so how am I supposed to cross into the heaven tier? Although there were indeed spiritual medicines in this world that could allow a martial artist to reach the heavens in a single step, the amount was really pitifully small, and one would need to have nature-defying luck to obtain them. However, the luck of the majority of people was very ordinary, and high-grade cultivation techniques were viewed as treasures by the various great forces. If one wasn't a true disciple or a core clansman, they couldn't cultivate at all, and it was very difficult to obtain a high-grade cultivation technique. That was why so many people went to ancient sites to explore. Wasn't it for the sake of breaking through the shackles in the future? Now, the Purple Moon Empire used cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques to recruit soldiers, which naturally attracted people. Ling Han also wanted to know the real situation of the Purple Moon Empire, so he said, "Come, let's go and enlist in the army." They walked over, and Ling Han said, "Little brother, if we enlist, we'll be able to learn high-grade cultivation techniques." "Of course, as long as you're able to achieve military merits," the soldier said. "Oh, how so?" A considerable number of people had gathered in the surroundings. The soldier cleared his throat, and said loudly, "I've already explained how to obtain cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques many times, but every time, there would be new friends coming over, so I'll still continue to explain. Those who haven't heard of it before, please listen carefully. In our Purple Moon Army, there are a total of 5 levels of official titles, which are King, General, Colonel, Captain, and Soldier. As long as you can enlist, you'll be the lowest rank, Soldier. Soldiers can learn any 6th-layer cultivation technique, which will allow you to steadily advance into the Flower Blossom tier." "Hiss!" everyone exclaimed in shock. It was the first time that most people here had heard of this, so they naturally couldn't help but be shocked. Even if this was the middle state, where martial arts were the most prosperous, flower blossom tier cultivators would be able to transcend mortality and possess an additional 200 years of lifespan. Anywhere they went, they would be able to be called an elite, and they would be able to be put in an important position no matter which force they entered. But it was precisely because of this that level 6 cultivation techniques were not easy to obtain. Who knew how many people were stuck at the spiritual pedestal tier? Firstly, they didn't have enough talent and resources, and secondly, they didn't have a cultivation technique, so how could they transcend mortality? Most importantly, advancing into the flower blossom tier would give them an additional 200 years of lifespan. This surpassed any kind of longevity spirit medicine, so who wouldn't want to? That soldier snickered, and said, however, it's not that easy to become a soldier. One has to at least be in the spiritual ocean tier, and after becoming a soldier, after every battle or completing a mission, military merits would be calculated. Once the military merits have reached a certain level, one would be able to be promoted from soldier to captain, and for a captain, one would be able to obtain a complete level 7 cultivation technique and an earth-grade martial arts technique. Similarly, accumulating military merits would allow one to continue to be promoted, becoming a colonel, general, or king. If one becomes a king, all secret techniques can be chosen, and even mystical powers can be cultivated. Mystical powers. Everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. Although the majority of them didn't know what mystical powers were, with the word divine in it, how could it not be awesome? I'll sign up, I'll sign up. Everyone raised their hands. The soldier chuckled, and handed out a piece of paper to everyone. The word, conscription, was written on the paper. He said, take this paper to the training camp in the north of the city and take the test for new recruits. Only if you pass will you be able to enlist. Moreover, you'll only be reserve soldiers. You'll have to complete your training before you can officially become soldiers. Otherwise, you'll only be sending yourselves to your deaths on the battlefield. You should know that our Purple Moon Army has always been famous for its low casualties. Everyone dispersed in an uproar. Although they weren't supreme elites, they were still potential elites of the spiritual ocean tier or spiritual pedestal tier. Could it be that they couldn't even become ordinary soldiers? Ling Han also asked for 2 conscription orders. He kept one for himself, and handed the other to Zhu Xian. He said, let's go play as well. Forget about Hunyo. She would listen obediently. They set out towards the north of the city. After exiting the city, there was a mountain peak not too far away. At the foot of the mountain was a military camp. The flag of the Purple Moon Empire was raised, and a large group of people surrounded the entrance. Chapter 556. Pooh! Ling Han instantly spat out a mouthful of wine. If Fatty Ma said he wanted to establish some force and sweep through the whole vast lands, then Ling Han wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. Such ambitious people were innumerable in history, and it wouldn't be strange if there was another Ma Duobao now. However, this Ma Duobao shouldn't have such powerful strength, right? Although Ling Han couldn't see through him, his cultivation couldn't possibly reach the shattering void tier no matter how he thought about it. Splitting open the skies. There were gods all around, and although this god wouldn't punish evil, if the balance of heaven and earth was destroyed, it would transform into the eye of heavenly Tao and appear, or even directly erase such an existence. Ling Han said something similar before, and ended up provoking the eye of heavenly Tao, but Hunyo scared it away. Thus, he didn't dare to speak carelessly now. Some things should be known in his heart, and it was better not to speak carelessly before he had enough strength. Fatty, you're really ambitious, Ling Han said ruefully. But allow me to ask, what's the meaning of this? Ma Duobao grinned, and said, shattering void tier breaking open the void, so only one person can become a god. Tanned brother, don't you think it'd be better to simply split open this sky and let everyone enter the realm of gods, letting everyone be like dragons? Ling Han choked. This was a shocking ambition, splitting open the sky and let everyone enter the realm of gods. Is that possible? He asked. Never tried, how would you know if it's possible? Ma Duobao said indifferently. Unexpectedly, this damn fatty actually had such ambition and the domineering desire to help the world, wanting to bring everyone into the realm of gods. Ling Han asked himself if he'd ever thought of this problem. Since ancient times, becoming a god had always been a personal matter. How could it be possible for even chickens and dogs to ascend to heaven? But thinking again, if it really could split open the sky and split open the earth, then he could really bring the people around him to ascend to the realm of gods. As long as he was strong enough. Ling Han pondered. It seemed that it was very difficult for gods to descend to the lower realm, or else the legends of gods wouldn't be heard all the time in the vast lands. He obtained Zi Shuexian's memory stone, and saw and heard with his own eyes that gods would be suppressed and rejected if they entered the lower realm. Clearly, breaking through the world was very difficult. Fatty, let me give you a toast. Ling Han raised his glass. Regardless of whether he was willing to join or not, just Ma Duobao's ambition was worthy of his respect. Ma Duobao gladly clinked cups with him, and the two of them downed the fine wine in one gulp. Black brothers. Alright, my name is Ling Han. Just call me by my name. Alright, my tanned brother. Ma Duobao readily accepted his advice, but he did not even think of changing his words. Have you ever thought about why there was a gap in history 10,000 years ago? Ling Han could not help but feel shocked. He thought of Zi Shuexian, and then thought of his last life. At that time, he didn't have any suspicions at all. But now that he thought about it, there was a gap in the history of his past life about 9,000 years ago. Many inheritances of martial art were annihilated in history, including the Tao of Alchemy. It was even worse for the Tao of Arrays. It was almost wiped out. If one were to calculate it, the era in which he lived was destroyed by a great disaster. In fact, it happened to be 1,000 years later, which was another 10,000 years. Every 10,000 years, there would be a great disaster in the vast lands. Also, Zi Shuexian left a message saying that 10,000 years was a huge lie, meaning, was it related to the great disaster every 10,000 years? He pondered for a moment, and then said, Does Brother Ma know? I do know, but walls have ears, so I can't say it out loud, Ma Duobao said seriously. Walls, where were the walls, and where were the ears? Ling Han did not understand, and only looked at Ma Duobao. Ma Duobao raised a finger, and pointed at the sky. Eye of Heavenly Tao. Ling Han said in surprise. Ma Duobao shook his head, and raised his hand again. Ling Han was stunned for a moment, and then instantly came to a realization. The Eye of Heavenly Tao was the guardian of this realm, high above. Then what about the realm of immortals? Why was the realm of immortals monitoring this realm? Moreover, the enemies that Zi Shuexian encountered were her clansmen in the realm of immortals. Those people mentioned the topic of the extinction of the human race, and seemed to be the main culprit of the great disaster 10,000 years ago. What made Ling Han confused was that it wasn't easy for the realm of immortals to destroy the lower realm. Even if immortals would be suppressed in the lower realm, wouldn't it be fine if a few more came? After all, there were only so many shattering void tiralites in the vast lands, but how many immortals were there in the realm of immortals? Tanned brother, 10,000 years is a cycle. In another 100 years, or maybe only a few decades, another great disaster will descend. If we don't think of something, then the tragedy of 10,000 years ago will repeat itself, Ma Duobao said. It can't be. Zhu Xian'er had been listening quietly all along, but finally couldn't help but exclaim. This topic was too shocking. On the other hand, Helian Sun Shui and Hunyo didn't care at all. One of them lost her memories, and the other was a child, completely without the concept of world destruction. Ling Han asked, Does Brother Ma know the source of all this? I can't say. Ma Duobao shook his head, and pointed at the sky. Ling Han was surprised, and said, could it be that announcing it aloud would lead to a great disaster? Hee, if the whole world were ignorant people, then it would obviously be easy to rule, Ma Duobao said with a smile. So, even smart people have to pretend to be ignorant. Tanned brother, your talent is shocking, and you'll definitely become a great person in the future, but you have to remember that the strong will break. There are too many elites in the world, and before you have enough power to protect yourself, you must remember to conceal your strength and bide your time. Ling Han nodded, and said, thanks for the reminder. Then, Tan brother, are you interested in joining me in a righteous cause? Ma Duobao asked. Hee, my current strength is still too weak. Let's talk about it when I reach the heaven tier. Ling Han refused. He obviously wouldn't disregard everything and step onto the pirate ship just because the other described a grand plan and outlined a great ambition for him. Ma Duobao didn't try to persuade him anymore, and only patted Ling Han's shoulder, and said, Tan brother, I believe you'll definitely make the right choice. Oh, right, it's not peaceful these days, so you'd better stay in the city. Also, take this spirit talisman and use it at the most dangerous time, it can save your life. He threw a spirit talisman at Ling Han, and without waiting for Ling Han to ask any further, he'd already floated away. Ling Han and Zhu Xian'er were still savoring his last words. What did they mean? Damn fatty, Niu's meat. Hu Niu screamed. Ma Duobao could leave, but he actually took all the roasted meat on the barbecue rack. How could she not feel heartache? Ling Han comforted her, and took out the meat to roast again. He and Zhu Xian'er looked at each other, both a bit worried. Ma Duobao's words revealed shocking news, and that was that the great disaster that almost destroyed the vast lands 10,000 years ago might happen again. Also, that fatty said don't go out of the city these days. It's not peaceful outside, what does that mean? Ling Han rubbed his chin, feeling that damn fatty was really unreliable, only saying half a sentence for everything, and making him guess on his own. Zhu Xian'er was also baffled. Only Hu Niu and Hellion Sun Shui were carefree, happily roasting meat on the side, craving it very much. Chapter 557. A night passed, and Ling Han and the three girls returned to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Although Xianyuan Ziguang said he would kill him when he came out, he obviously wasn't so free to keep an eye on him all day, or else a great battle would be unavoidable. At noon, Yinhong ran over in a hurry. What happened? Why are you in such a hurry? Ling Han said with a smile. Pa, I'm a virtuous lady, how can you describe me as being in a hurry? Yinhong said with dissatisfaction. A virtuous lady who talks about me all day, this is the first time I've seen one, Ling Han said with a smile. Then you've seen it, Yinhong said unabashedly. Oh, right, there's something important for you. What is it? Ling Han asked casually. In the past few days, no one has entered the city, Yinhong said. That counts as something important? Why not? Do you know what kind of place Million Treasures City is? How many people go in and out every day? Millions, but only people go out now, and no one comes in. The entire city is much more desolate. Go to the Great Hall outside, and see how many fewer guests there are. Yinhong said in one breath. Ling Han suddenly remembered that Ma Duobao said yesterday that it wasn't peaceful outside recently, and it was best to stay in Million Treasures City. Could it be that damn fatty knew the reason, and so intentionally warned him? Do you know why? Yinhong shook her head, and said, I sent out a few groups to scout out the situation, but they didn't return either. She paused, and said, maybe Million Treasures City has already been targeted by some force, and they set up an ambush on the main road. One can only leave, but not enter. Ling Han knocked on the table, and said, what force would do this, and what benefit would it bring them? The Spirit Treasures Pavilion did business, and the Alchemist Society concocted pills. The two working together could allow medicinal pills to circulate throughout the continent, which was beneficial to martial artists. Who would destroy it? Even if ancient sects like the Heaven Sword sect and the Cloud Phoenix sect had their own alchemists, there was no need to do such a thing, right? That's why we have to investigate, Ing Hong said. Ling Han glared at her, and said, "You're thinking about me?" "Hee, don't you want to know who did it?" Ing Hong said. "Even if the sky collapses, there will naturally be someone tall enough to hold it up. I'm merely in the flower blossom tier, so what does it have to do with me?" Ling Han said indifferently. However, Ing Hong did not smile anymore. She said, "The situation this time is really a little unusual. The communication stones in the city can no longer be used to contact the outside world. Now, people can only leave but not enter. Million Treasures City seems to have become an isolated city, completely unaware of what's happening in the outside world. Aren't there experts of the Heaven Tier?" "Just let them go," Ling Han said. "Some people speculate that this might be a huge conspiracy. Even if a Heaven Tier elite appeared, they might also be targeted. Million Treasures City's protective formation is the best, and as long as there's enough origin crystals to support it, even shattering Void Tier elites can't break in," Yin Hong said. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "So, Heaven Tier warriors are afraid of death, so Flower Blossom Tier warriors are sent to die." "That's not true. Although Flower Blossom Tier warriors are weak, elites wouldn't care, so maybe it's not dangerous." Yin Hong revealed a worried expression. "The main thing is that Million Treasures City has become blind and deaf, completely unaware of what they're going to face next. They have to ask for help from the outside world." Ling Han sighed. "Why couldn't it be peaceful wherever he went?" "Does this count as me being dragged down by you?" he said with a smile. "Ha, now that you've boarded this old lady's pirate ship, just obediently accept your fate." Yin Hong laughed wildly in cooperation. However, this really wasn't any good news. A few days later, the situation became more and more unfavorable, because when one raised their head, they could see that the entire sky had disappeared, and what replaced it was a black fog that shrouded the sky. This time, everyone felt that something was wrong, and the atmosphere in the city instantly became anxious and uneasy. Ling Han took out the spirit talisman that Ma Duobao gave him, and couldn't help but think that this damn fatty should have long known that such a situation would happen, which was why he told him not to leave the city in the near future. Obviously, this wasn't the end, there would be even more dangerous things that would happen. This spirit talisman could save his life. Ling Han smiled. Ma Duobao obviously didn't know that he possessed the Black Tower, and this was his strongest life-saving trump card. However, this spirit talisman couldn't be wasted, because the thing that Ma Duobao took out definitely wasn't simple. This should be an instant teleportation talisman, he speculated. In any case, he was a Heaven Tier elite in his previous life, so he could guess a little from the patterns on the spirit talisman. An instant teleportation talisman. Although I deceived many people and made them think that I possessed an instant teleportation talisman and not the Black Tower, I never thought that I really obtained one. Even in my previous life, I couldn't make this thing. Apparently, it had to be a shattering Void Tier elite who understood the secrets of the Void to be able to refine it. Ma Duobao, truly a treasure trove. Did this guy obtain an ancient treasure trove? His wealth is truly shocking. This guy's strength is unfathomable, and I don't know where he ran off to now. Ling Han decided to leave the city. Sitting and waiting for death wasn't his style, though he had the Black Tower and could turn danger into safety no matter how desperate the situation was. Moreover, he was also very curious. This was Heaven Treasure City, and there were Heaven Tier elites keeping watch, but someone actually dared to have designs on it. How powerful was this force? He had the three girls enter the Black Tower, otherwise, if something happened in Million Treasures City after he left, it would be too late for regret. However, The problem was that only Zhu Xian'er was willing to listen obediently, and Hellion Sun Shui couldn't be stored in the Black Tower, or else Ling Han wouldn't have to worry. Meanwhile, Hunyo refused to enter the Black Tower, pestering him to be with her. It couldn't be helped, they'd go together. Anyways, Hunyo could enter the Black Tower at the most dangerous time, and Hellion Sun Shui was a heaven-tier elite, so in a life-and-death situation, she might erupt with instincts and recover terrifying strength. The city's Great Formation was already activated to defend against unknown dangers, but it was a small matter to go out, because now everyone hoped that someone would go out to investigate, and they were just worrying that no one would volunteer. The three successfully left the city, and a black fog filled the air ahead, affecting their vision. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, but it was useless. The fog was thick, and even the Eye of Truth couldn't see through it. It probably wasn't that the Eye of Truth wasn't powerful enough, but that Ling Han's tier was a bit low, affecting the effect of the Eye of Truth. Be careful, Ling Han said, and simply let Zhu Xian'er out. Taking people into the Black Tower was only a matter of thought anyway. The four of them walked forward. Soon, the black fog surrounded them, and their visibility was reduced again. They could barely see things 3 meters away. Ling Han was slightly better, but he had only reached a height of 6 meters. What formation is this? Zhu Xian'er asked. Among the 3 girls, only she was more reliable. Hellion Sun Shui's intelligence was touching, and Hunyo was a child. Ling Han's expression was solemn as he said, "If I didn't guess wrong, this is the 4th killing formation." Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 558. 4th killing formation. Zhu Xian'er asked in surprise. Legend has it that there is a spirit in heaven and earth that formed 10 natural killing arrays. Ling Han explained. The 10 great killing formations are all extremely terrifying. The 2nd killing formation to the 10th killing formation can even kill shattering void tier elites. Then what about the 1st killing formation? Zhu Xian'er couldn't help but ask. The 1st killing formation. Ling Han paused. It's also known as the God-slaying formation. Could it even kill gods? Zhu Xian'er exclaimed in shock. That's right. Ling Han nodded. The 1st killing formation can even obliterate deities. It's the 1st killing formation in the world. However, the formation Dao has been lost. Who was the one who set up such a killing formation? The 4th killing formation could even kill high-level shattering void tier elites, and there were actually people who could set it up these days. Putting aside whether there was such a formation master, just the materials used to set up the formation were extremely extravagant. Then aren't we in extreme danger? Zhu Xian'er asked. Ling Han nodded, and said, I don't know what faction it is, to actually use the 4th killing formation to besiege Million Treasures City. Are they trying to turn the entire city into a land of death? However, Million Treasures City is the center of wealth in the Central Plains, and its value lies in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society. What benefits would they gain if everyone died? It could be explained if they occupied some treasured land, but Million Treasures City was definitely not some holy land for cultivation. There were no natural treasures either, so was there a need to activate the 4th killing formation? How strange. Ling Han shook his head, and said, it's impossible for us to break through this formation. Even if a shattering void tier elite came, they'd have to be at least in the 9th layer of the shattering void tier to be qualified to force their way through. Otherwise, even a dozen of them would have to kneel. Zhu Xian'er naturally agreed. No one knew how many shattering void tier elites there were in the vast lands, but at most there would be a dozen or so. Even if all of them came, they might not be able to break through this killing formation. They slowly retreated, afraid that the killing formation would react and kill them on the spot. Fortunately, Although the fourth killing formation could kill Shattering Void tier elites, it didn't seem to care much about minor characters like them. The formation didn't move, and didn't react. On the other hand, it was also because they did not go too deep. Otherwise, a killing array was a killing array after all. They would not have missed a small fish just because the net was too big. They left the area of the formation, and Wanbao City appeared in front of them again. In reality, this was the core of the entire killing array. However, because the Celestial Treasure Pavilion had also activated the array to defend against it, it had become a relatively safe area. Han Lin snorted coldly, and a majestic and domineering figure appeared in front of them. Xianyuan Ziguang. He stared at Ling Han, killing intent swirling around him. This was not the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and it was even outside of Million Treasures City. No one could stop him from killing. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "You guys go into the city first. I'll deal with this guy. Be careful." Zhu Xian'er was as gentle as water. "Beat him up." Hunyo waved her little fists. "Beat him up." Helian Sun Shui kept leaning towards Hunyo, because under Lu Yutong and Li Xichan's brainwashing, she obviously wouldn't trust Zhu Xian'er, so she could only imitate Hunyo. The three girls, 2 adults and 1 child, returned to the city, while Ling Han confronted Xianyuan Ziguang. Ling Han didn't dare to have any contempt. If it was a battle of the same tier, he had the confidence not to lose to anyone. However, not only was Xianyuan Ziguang's tier much higher than his, but his battle prowess was also extremely outstanding. In reality, he was in a weaker position. Xianyuan Ziguang didn't waste words, and directly shot out a palm from afar. Hung, a sea of fire spread out, sweeping wildly towards Ling Han. Ling Han used the Demon Fairy Step and charged towards the opponent. His tier was much lower than the opponent's, and it would be foolish to pull away and exchange blows with the opponent. In battle, one obviously had to display one's strengths. Using one's weakness to meet the opponent's strength was really too unwise. Dream on. Xianyuan Ziguang sneered. He also used his movement technique, pulling away from Ling Han while launching powerful attacks, taking the complete initiative. His talent in martial art really wasn't below Ling Han's, and even surpassed it in some aspects. At least, 22 flashes of qi. At present, he was number 1 among the younger generation. Under the amplification of the spirit qi of heaven and earth, it was as if 23 of him were attacking Ling Han together, truly shocking. Ling Han dealt with it calmly. He had many trump cards, 2, Demon Birth Sword, Thunder Battle Armor, Body of Iron Sheet, which one of them couldn't turn the tide of battle. He also sneered, and said, "Since you don't dare to fight in close combat, try this move." His figure retreated continuously, instantly pulling away a distance of 30 meters from Xianyuan Ziguang. Previously, he had been trying to close the distance between them, and this sudden retreat was naturally out of Xianyuan Ziguang's expectations, causing the opponent to pause slightly. He didn't counterattack immediately, fearing that this was a trap. Once he advanced, Ling Han also leaped forward. My cultivation is higher than yours, and my origin power is denser than yours. With distance, you're even less of a match for me, Xianyuan Ziguang said proudly, and with a palm strike, 23 fire tigers appeared, pouncing towards Ling Han. It was merely 30 meters, this bit of distance couldn't exhaust his origin power at all. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "You think too highly of yourself." He made a drawing motion, and instantly, a speck of light appeared, immediately turning into the shape of an arrow. Xiao, it shot towards Xianyuan Ziguang. Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. As fast as flowing light. Xianyuan Ziguang was greatly shocked, and hurriedly activated his origin power to protect himself. This arrow shot into his chest. Fortunately, his origin power shield activated in time, blocking this arrow. Even so, it still made him groan, so uncomfortable that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. In terms of power, he was obviously above Ling Han, but Ling Han concentrated his power on a single point, while he had to set up defenses all over his body. This naturally couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. It couldn't be helped, this arrow was too fast, and he had absolutely no idea where it would shoot at him. Left with no choice, he could only defend himself. Ling Han calmly retreated, shaking off the 23 fire tigers, and said with a smile, "Only so." Xianyuan Ziguang's face was filled with sullen anger. No matter tier or battle prowess, he should be able to firmly suppress Ling Han, but he suffered a small loss under this one strike, making him feel that his pride had been wounded. For a godlike man like him, it had always been only him who defied tier to defeat other geniuses. How could he be defied by someone else? He was furious, and flames appeared on top of his head, turning into ancient mystical beasts such as true dragons and true phoenixes, displaying an extremely special bloodline. "You're dead for sure," he declared coldly. Ling Han laughed, and said, "You really know how to boast. Who didn't know how to format?" Hong. Just at this moment, the black fog actually surged, and faintly visible were actually sabers, swords, axes, and battle axes, densely interwoven with terrifying vein-like patterns, surging with a shocking cold light. Ling Han's expression changed, and he immediately ran towards the city. Xianyuan Ziguang was furious. Seeing that he had shown his might, this brat actually gave up the battle. He was just about to scold him, but when he saw this transformed black fog, he instantly felt a chill in his heart. Similarly, he exerted force in his legs, and ran towards the city gates. The fourth killing formation had been activated. Chapter 559. This move was very despicable, but very effective. Hellion Sun Shui obviously wouldn't perish together with her opponent, and her figure immediately flashed, avoiding the range of the stone tablet's descent. When the seventh elder of the Yu family saw that this move was effective, he couldn't help but cackle strangely, driving the stone tablet to charge towards Hellion Sun Shui. He obviously knew that with Hellion Sun Shui's speed, he couldn't possibly kill her, but he could drive her away. What he wanted was Ling Han's life. Hellion Sun Shui seemed to have great misgivings, unwilling to clash head-on with the seventh elder of the Yu family. Otherwise, with the toughness of her physique, which was even above Ling Han's, she was completely qualified to clash head-on against this kind of gravity-type spirit tool. This made Ling Han click his tongue in wonder, unable to understand. Could it be that the amnesia from back then still had an effect on Hellion Sun Shui now, making her hands and feet bound when she fought? The seventh elder of the Yu family attacked continuously, and Hellion Sun Shui retreated continuously, instantly reversing the situation. "Honored one, this old man will not lower himself to your level. You leave now, and this old man will act as if nothing happened," the seventh elder of the Yu family said. He indeed didn't want to form a death feud with such an elite. Hellion Sun Shui only snorted coldly, and lightly clapped her hands, yet a wave of origin power swept up. Patterns flashed, and the power was extremely terrifying. Then this old man can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you." The seventh elder of the Yu family sneered. He suddenly turned around, and fixed his gaze on Ling Han. "First, I'll kill you, a junior." This was the goal of his trip. This person had the 10,000-year-old treasured pearl, and he definitely had to obtain it. Of course, killing Ling Han to avenge the descendants of the Yu family was also one of the reasons, but compared to the 10,000-year-old treasured pearl, this was merely something he did in passing. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Freak, this lord will take care of you." He threw out the heaven transformation bowl. Wang, the treasured bowl shone, and the patterns on it came alive, emitting a resplendent light. Hong, long, that stone tablet actually flew towards the heaven transformation bowl at high speed, and in this process, the stone tablet was also endlessly shrinking. What? The seventh elder of the Yu family was greatly shocked. He felt that he was losing connection with this spirit tool. With a loud shout, he charged towards Ling Han. He had obtained this spirit tool in an ancient tomb, and it had helped him kill a few elites of the same cultivation level. It was his greatest trump card, and he definitely couldn't lose it. And this stone bowl that Ling Han drew out could actually affect and absorb the stone tablet. This caused him to be greatly shocked, but also greatly delighted. If he could snatch this bowl, then wouldn't he have gained another treasure? His face was filled with greed, and his right hand stretched out, grabbing towards Ling Han. Hang! A cold snort of disdain suddenly sounded out behind him. Oh no! He hurriedly said inwardly, but before he could finish his thought, he felt a pain in his chest, and his whole person was once again sent flying. He saw Hellion Sun Xue's figure become smaller and smaller in his eyes. As expected, he was sent flying again. This time, he wasn't so lucky. Hellion Sun Xue chased after him and began to violently beat him up. Without the protection of a spirit tool, how could he be a match for Hellion Sun Xue, the ruler of the sea race? She cultivated both origin power and physical arts, and added with the secret techniques of the sea race, her battle prowess was definitely terrifying. In a short while, the seventh elder of the Yu clan was defeated, and could only flee. Heaven Tier was Heaven Tier, after all. He burned his life force source, and his speed was actually ridiculously fast, reaching a level comparable to Hellion Sun Xue's. However, this kind of consumption was irreversible. What was consumed was his lifespan, at least losing a few dozen years of his lifespan. However, compared to being killed on the spot by Hellion Sun Xue, losing a few dozen years of his lifespan naturally didn't matter. If Hellion Sun Xue wanted to chase, it was fine. She could also similarly burn her life force source, and she would definitely be able to catch up. However, she obviously wasn't willing, and only chased for 2 steps before stopping, turning around to look for Ling Han. "Milord, thank you very much for your help. The Purple Moon Empire will definitely have a gift of thanks, but if you want to harm Ling Han, you'll have to pass through me first." Xiao Yong Nian stood horizontally in front of Hellion Sun Xue. This was the belief of the Purple Moon Empire. As the boss, he had to protect the underlings, or else how would the underlings risk their lives for you? Hellion Sun Xue reached out with a wave of her hand, and Xiao Yong Nian was pushed to the side by her. She stopped in front of Ling Han, her gaze flickering as if she was hesitating about something. "Hai Niu, if there's anything, we can sit down and slowly talk about it. There's nothing that can't be discussed," Ling Han said with a smile. He had already put away the stone tablet. The rock spirit was about to break through to the deity transformation tier, and if it could refine this stone tablet, Heaven Tier wouldn't be far away. Only then could it be considered a hired thug. Hellion Sun Xue reached out and picked Ling Han up. "Xiao," she turned around and left. "Silly Niu, silly Niu." Hu Niu jumped out and hurriedly chased after her. She could care less about anything, but she definitely wouldn't allow anyone to snatch Ling Han away. "Little girl, wait for Uncle Rabbit." Rabbit hurriedly chased after her. Zhu Xian'er wasn't slow either, but her cultivation was the weakest, so she could only fall behind. Xiao Yong Nian struggled to get up, but felt a pain in his chest. How could he catch his breath in one go? Instantly, he sat down on the ground. None of the new soldiers dared to chase after her. That was a Heaven Tier elite, and if they chased after her, wouldn't they just be sending themselves to die? She didn't go on a killing spree, and that was already a mercy beyond the law. "Don't think your life is too long, return to camp." Xiao Yong Nian also knew that it was unrealistic to let these new soldiers chase after him. The only plan now was to report the news. Although it was only a new soldier, the Purple Moon Empire definitely wouldn't allow anyone to bully one of their own. An elite would definitely rush over, perhaps a general, or even a king. "Xiao," Hellion Sun Xue grabbed onto Ling Han and advanced continuously. Her speed was astonishing, and even if she was holding on to Ling Han, she didn't slow down much. After walking for a very long time, she finally stopped and threw him onto the ground. Ling Han didn't hide inside the Black Tower. If Hellion Sun Shui wanted to kill him, she wouldn't have brought him along and fled. He dusted off his butt, stood up, and said, "Your temper has grown again." Hellion Sun Shui glared fiercely at him, and suddenly struck out violently. Peng, 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 it was a beating. Similarly, although her attacks were heavy, none of them were killing moves. Thus, Ling Han only used all his strength to protect his handsome face. As for the rest, just beat her. He just felt it was strange that this Hai Niu was becoming more and more abnormal. After Hellion Sun Shui beat him enough, she finally stopped. She took off her cloak, and there was actually a baby wrapped on her back. At the moment, the baby was sleeping soundly, and even stuck out a finger in his mouth, sucking on it, looking very cute. No wonder she didn't forcefully clash with that stone tablet earlier. It should be because she was worried that she would hurt the baby. Otherwise, with her strength and temper, so what if she took it head-on? Could this be her son? Hellion Sun Shui held the baby for a while, then handed him over to Ling Han, and said, "Take good care of him. If he loses even a strand of hair, I'll kill you 10,000 times." Ling Han subconsciously took it, then scratched his head, and said, "I don't seem to have the habit of raising other people's children." Had this Hai Niu's head been smacked silly again? She actually wanted him to raise a child. "This is your son," Hellion Sun Shui said angrily. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.